Chapter 31-41. Yi Qing Luo. Zhu Wu Xian's voice suddenly became heavier. Both his hands suddenly placed on Yi Qing Luo's shoulders. Answer me, isn't it? His tone was still icy cold, but it was filled with questions. This attitude made Yi Qing Luo's brows creased even tighter. Her pink lips were tightly pursed as her face surfaced some anger. She glanced sideways at the hand on her shoulder. Following that, she raised her hand and patted the hand on her shoulder. Zhu Wu Xian, what answer do you want to hear from me? She looked at Zhu Wu Xian calmly. Ah Xian is my fiancé, my man. Even if something happened between me and him, that is something that should be expected. Zhu Wu Xian's expression instantly sunk as he raised his hand to grab her. Don't say things that will make me angry, you are. Zhu Wu Xian, Xiao Yi said something earlier which is very right. Yi Qing Luo interrupted Zhu Wu Xian's words as she took a step back to avoid his touch. Don't deceive yourself and others, living in an unrealistic fantasy. This is the last time I'm saying this to you. I don't belong to you, not in the past, not now and not in the future. Her voice could be said to be extremely indifferent, and it was stern and firm, without any room for resistance. Zhu Wu Xian's hand froze in midair. He clenched his fists tightly. All the muscles in his body were tensed up at this moment. His expression was like frost, so cold that it could cut through one's bones. That pair of icy cold eyes seemed to be filled with ice shards. The vortex in his eyes kept on surging wildly. There seemed to be a voice clamoring in his heart. They were clamoring for him to destroy all of it. To destroy everyone Yi Qing Luo relied on, everything, every place. After that, to imprison Yi Qing Luo by his side, to accompany him for eternity. That thought kept on surging in his mind. Like a raging wave, it kept on surging. Zhu Wu Xian's current gaze was so strange and terrifying that even Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but feel a chill down her spine. His eyes were so cold that they seemed to be able to cause her heart to stop beating. The powerful and shocking aura was accompanied by an intense murderous intent. Yi Qing Luo's pupils constricted violently. A strong sense of unease spread from the bottom of his heart. She also released her perception on her own. His body also assumed a defensive posture. This action also stung Zhu Wuxin's eyes. The murderous aura in his eyes became even more violent and ferocious. She was actually afraid of him? She actually isolated him outside? She was actually guarding against him. Miss Yi, Di Zun. Are you awake? Just as you expected, the reinforcements are all heavily injured. Those bastards from the Palace of Darkness are too despicable. Suddenly, a deep, resounding, and urgent roar came from outside the inn. The general and a few soldiers rushed in with big stride. Yi Qing Luo's gaze went past Zhu Wu Xian, as it floated downwards to the main hall. The soldiers supported many of the heavily injured soldiers into the inn. The hall was instantly filled with the smell of blood. Yi Qing Luo frowned as she didn't have the mood to continue tangling with Zhu Wu Xian. She retracted her gaze and was just about to speak to Zhu Wu Xian. But Zhu Wu Xian only used that pair of extremely indifferent and filled with endless whirlpools as he fixed his gaze on her. Just one look. Zhu Wu Xian's figure seemed to have blended into the air as he disappeared. Chapter 31-42. She called out Zhu Wu Xian's name as she sensed her surroundings. But there was no response to her. There was only a cool breeze blowing gently. She didn't sense Zhu Wu Xian's presence. He wouldn't. Had he really left the inn? The human face was still hidden in his arm. If the human face took the opportunity to leave his arm, it would be extremely difficult for them to find that piece of human face again. But Yi Qing Luo didn't have the time to look for Zhu Wu Xian. In the main hall, more and more injured soldiers and disciples dressed in the imperial palace's uniform were supported in. Yi Qing Luo could only put Zhu Wu Xian's matter aside. Although Zhu Wu Xian's character was a little cold, but he wasn't someone who didn't know how to look at the bigger picture. Unless, the thoughts had just surfaced in her mind. Behind her, there was a warm and thick chest wall. The man's hand hooked onto her waist. He gently lifted her up. Her body, along with this force, fell directly into the main hall. The Grand General immediately went up to them. Overlord, Miss Yi, I'm so sorry to disturb your rest so early in the morning, but these brothers can't wait. Yi Qing Luo's vision swept past the injured people in the main hall as she asked in a deep voice, "What's going on?" "Yesterday we requested for reinforcements. The soldiers stationed in the other strongholds in South Tide Continent received the emergency signal, and while they were rushing over in batches, they were ambushed by the monsters." The Grand General clenched his fists tightly. Yesterday that batch of Palace of Darkness's disciples and the monsters were simply a cover. They were simply trying to attract our attention, then taking the opportunity to attack the other strongholds. As he said that, he hugged his head in extreme frustration as he clenched his fists tightly and pounded his own head fiercely. I shouldn't have sent out the emergency signal. I shouldn't have let them rush over to help. It's all my fault, to let them fall into such a dangerous situation. Grand General, it's not your fault. It's Palace of Darkness. Palace of Darkness is simply too despicable and shameless. The other soldiers immediately rushed up to stop the Grand General. The Grand General's muscles tightened as he looked at Dmo Xian and Yi Qing Luo with reddened eyes. Overlord. Miss Yi, I beg you. You must save these brothers. Yesterday Xiang Shengfa's attack on Valley Wind City with the undead corpse puppets, the flying demonic beasts, and the disciples of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness were all just a pretense? His true goal, it was actually, other fortresses? After they finished dealing with Elephant Shengfa and the others, before the reinforcements arrived. Yi Qing Luo had indeed guessed it before. The reinforcements were on the way, but they were blocked by other teams from the Palace of Darkness, which delayed them. But he never thought that Xiang Shengfa was not the main attacker. She thought that she had successfully repelled the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and protected the Three Valley Wind City. In fact, it was just a bad plan of the Dark Palace. This knowledge made Yi Qing Luo's expression sunk instantly. She glanced sideways and exchanged glances with the man beside her. She pursed her lips. Ah Xian, if this move of the Palace of Darkness is really a plan, then the Palace of Darkness is indeed an opponent that cannot be underestimated. Dmo Xian hugged her waist tightly as he comforted her and squeezed, but this move of the Palace of Darkness also means that the Palace of Darkness is already unable to hold back and wants to quickly invade the South Continent. As for why they want to increase the speed and use such a risky method, there is a possibility that something has happened internally in the Palace of Darkness. Chapter 3143. Right. Secluded Palace was in such a hurry to invade the South Continent. It must be because something had happened within the Secluded Palace. Otherwise, Secluded Palace would absolutely not waste a huge amount of manpower and resources at this critical juncture to hasten the speed of invading. The Elephant Saint technique would appear at the Valley Wind City's gate, which meant that the people from Secluded Palace knew that she and Dmo Xian had come to the South Continent, which also meant that the people from Secluded Palace had no time to care about their existence. Secluded Palace only wanted to reach their own goal as soon as possible, as long as they invaded the other strongholds in the South Continent. Then, the last Valley Wind City, even with Yi Qing Luo and the others around, Secluded Palace had the absolute confidence to take it down? Save them first. Yi Qing Luo clenched her fists as she suppressed the guesses in her heart and started to help the injured soldiers to treat their wounds. It could be said that Secluded Palace's plan this time was extremely ruthless. There were at least 300 to 400 soldiers who died under the sneak attack. Even the Imperial Palace's disciples had died over 10 people. Those who were seriously injured and rushed to Valley Wind City added up to about 100 people. Moreover, their injuries were extremely serious. It could be seen that these soldiers had all escaped from a life and death situation. Indeed, once the corpse puppets made their move, these soldiers were not a match for the undead corpse puppets at all. Miss Yi, those monsters are very sinister. Not only are they impenetrable, water and fire resistant, we have no way to resist. The most important thing is, if we are scratched by those monsters on our bodies will also undergo changes. The Grand General's voice was cold and hard as his eyes turned red as he stared at his brothers in the main hall. His voice was trembling. Those wounds, some of them will cause our brothers to turn into rotting corpses. Right in front of us, they will start to corrode slowly from the wounds. And some of them will have a huge change in temperament. They will start to attack us. It's like they have become one with those monsters. But their battle power is much lower than those monsters. When the Grand General said this, his voice was already choking. Miss Yi, you and your mercenary brothers can deal with that bunch of monsters, so you will definitely be able to save them, right? Today, the great general could only place his hopes on Yiqing Luo. She was his group of brothers who had gone through life and death together for so many years, their only hope. After listening to the great general's words, Yiqing Luo's expression turned even more grave. That group of monsters are known as corpse puppets, and they are battle-type puppets which are refined from dead corpses using a sinister secret method. Therefore, the bodies of the puppets were filled with evil miasma. This miasma can be transmitted into a person's body through a wound, and from there, it can corrode the body. She thought. The evil miasma required at least a semi-finished corpse puppet to have such a function. Unexpectedly, these defective products could actually use miasma to affect humans. However, she was able to deal with the undead corpse puppets because she had Yoin's mental power. However, the method to purify the miasma in their bodies, she didn't know what to do. Looking at the pleading eyes of the great general, as well as the expectant gazes of the soldiers, Yiqing Luo couldn't say anything to destroy their hopes. She pursed her pink lips and tried to think of a way to purify the miasma in her mind. She wanted to calm everyone down first. Just as he was about to speak. Chapter 3144. The moment this voice was heard, immediately, the entire inn fell into a strange silence. All the soldiers' gazes were directed towards Dmo Xian. Their eyes were filled with reverence. Even those soldiers who were covered in blood and riddled with scars, propped themselves up and looked towards Dmo Xian. Regarding the Overlord's prestige, they had all heard of it. The rumored Overlord, to them, was a godlike existence. To be able to see the Overlord's face with their own eyes, this was something that they didn't even dare to think about. Reverent and admiring gazes were all gathered on Dmo Xian. But, towards these reverent gazes, Dmo Xian was already used to it as he wasn't moved at all. He gently raised his palm and gently placed it on Yiqing Luo's slender shoulder as his tone was gentle and filled with pampering. Lil Luo the defective corpse puppets have not been processed and the evil miasma on them is extremely dense. Don't try to purify it easily as it will affect you. Miasma? Yiqing Luo wasn't unfamiliar with this term. She instantly understood the meaning behind Dmo Xian's words. The last time at the Miao tribe, she had seen the effect of the corpse puppets on the Miao tribe's guards. She was also clear that the remnant yin qi on the corpse puppets would corrode into the human body and infect them. She had not expected the defective corpse puppets to have such great destructive power. No wonder the secluded palace could make use of these batch after batch of defective products to start a war without any fear. The corpse puppets were impenetrable, impervious to fire and water. It itself was an existence that defied the heavens. Using the corpse puppets as weapons, even if it was a cultivator, they would be helpless against the corpse puppets and could only passively take a beating. Not to mention, after being injured by the corpse puppets, they would also be corroded by the corpse puppets' miasma. In this way, battling against the corpse puppets, Not only were they unable to hit the corpse puppets, they had to try their best to ensure that they could not be touched by the corpse puppet. To these generals and soldiers it was like this. It was indeed something that was impossible to achieve. They were able to escape from the hands of the corpse puppets to Valley Wind City, which was already considered incredible. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips and looked up at the man beside her. "I'll leave it to you. I'll go talk to Beiyuan and see if we can refine more weapons as soon as possible." Dmo Xian ruffled her hair. Yiqing Luo took a look at Tang Beiyuan's direction. Tang Beiyuan nodded slightly before turning around and walking into the room she had rested in the night before. Yiqing Luo took a step forward. Just as he reached the stairs, suddenly a weak voice came from behind. "The thank you, Madame de." Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted. "Empress, Madame Emperor?" The way Lin Mingya addressed Lin Mingya made her cheeks flush. One of them thanked him. Very quickly, the other soldiers all propped up their injured bodies as they respectfully thanked Yiqing Luo. "Thank you, Imperial Madam. Thank you, Overlord, for saving us." Although today was the first time these soldiers had seen Dmo Xian and Yiqing Luo, but they were all very clear. As long as Di Zun was willing to help them, the injuries caused by the undead corpse puppets would definitely be healed. And the reason why Di Zun was willing to help. Just because of Yiqing Luo. Because of Di Zun's wife. Yiqing Luo looked at those soldiers behind her. The soldiers' eyes were filled with sincerity. After being infected by the undead corpse puppet, they could still hold on till here. And there were no signs of them going berserk. Chapter 31:45. As long as one's heart had no evil thoughts, no darkness, the corpse puppet's miasma would not be able to corrode one's heart. That way, he wouldn't be assimilated by the undead corpse puppets and become the undead corpse puppet's puppet. But, the longer the miasma stayed in the body, even if they were not assimilated by the corpse puppets, they would be affected by the miasma and turn into a rotten corpse. The most important thing now was to purify the miasma in these soldiers' bodies. Yiqing Luo smiled at them. "Have a good rest. After your bodies have recovered, there's a big battle waiting for you." "Yes, Imperial Madam." The soldiers cupped their fists as they replied in unison. Yiqing Luo left the soldiers in the main hall to Dmo Xian to settle. She followed closely behind Tang Beiyuan as they walked into the room. Just as she closed the door, she heard Tang Beiyuan's chuckle. "Imperial Madam. This title is indeed more suitable than the Imperial Palace's mistress." Yiqing Luo coughed lightly. "Stop teasing me, let's talk about proper matters." Tang Beiyuan nodded. "I know what you want to ask, but refining weapons, and under the circumstances where there's no conditions, refining more weapons, is very difficult." Tang Beiyuan didn't beat around the bush. "In 3 days, we've refined 48 weapons, and that's already the limit. That's because we're in the Imperial Palace's armament refining hall, and we don't lack any armament refining equipment. But we're in the South Continent now." Yiqing Luo's expression turned grave. "I understand what you mean. No matter if it was refining weapons or pills. Other than the refining technique, the external conditions were also very important. For example, the refining location, refining materials, etc. In a place like South Continent, the refining location wasn't considered good and the equipment wasn't complete. Even if Tang Beiyuan could refine weapons, she wouldn't be able to achieve the same efficiency and quality of weapons as when she was in the Imperial Palace. As an armament master, she would absolutely not allow herself to refine any flawed weapons. Especially for a armament sect, grade armament master like Tang Beiyuan. Towards her own work, she would be even more meticulous. Moreover, Secluded Palace was obviously speeding up their invasion of the South Continent. It was absolutely impossible to give them more time to refine weapons. The Dark Palace will definitely continue to send corpse puppets to attack Valley Wind City. Yiqing Luo sighed softly. "If I can refine a weapon that is able to contend against most of the dead corpses, Her hand lightly stroked the pattern imprinted on the azure dew bracelet on her wrist. In his heart, he sighed. If Old Man Tsang was here, he would definitely be able to give her a good idea, most of them. Tang Beiyuan murmured what Yi Qing Luo said earlier, and suddenly her eyes lit up as she clapped her hands. Why didn't I think of that? You have a weapon that can fight against most undead puppets. Yi Qing Luo was stunned. Me? Tang Beiyuan put her hand on her shoulder excitedly. The glowing fan. Your gourd flame fan was refined from your heart's blood and bones. This gourd flame fan also contains your power. As long as you extract a portion of the mental energy used to fight against the undead puppets and fuse it with the ghastly flame fan, your ghastly flame fan will be much stronger than the weapons we forged in the Imperial Palace. To refine an excellent weapon and then fuse it with the serene yin's mental energy. It required a lot of time. Chapter 3146. Of course, if it was an ordinary weapon, he could only start from the beginning of the refinement, step by step, to extract the nether-een spiritual energy and fuse it with the nether-een spiritual energy. But the devouring flame fan was different. The glower flame fan was not only refined from Yi Qing Luo's heart, bone, and blood. The ghastly flame fan was also a weapon that could grow in quality. It was a spiritual power that could completely fuse with the Netherworld Palace. In this way, Yi Qing Luo would be able to use the glower flame fan to go against most of the undead puppets. Yi Qing Luo muttered to herself for a moment and made up her mind. All right, then I'll have to trouble you to think of a way to merge the serene yin's mental power into the glower flame fan. Tang Beiyuan received the glower flame fan from Yi Qing Luo. I'll get it done now. As she spoke, she took out some equipment from her spatial ring. Tang Beiyuan was fiddling with the equipment when she suddenly thought of something as she abruptly raised her head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. That's right, Qing Luo, that smear of mental energy which had fused with the weapon, you really have no way to extract more? If the amount extracted is too little, it will be less effective against the undead puppets. For a weapon like the gourd flame fan that can grow, if I can extract a large amount of nether-een mental energy and fuse it with it, the effect will definitely double. Yi Qing Luo's finger on her wrist stiffened slightly. She lowered her eyes and fixed her gaze on the azure dew bracelet. This was what Tang Beiyuan had said. She had thought about it a long time ago. However, control over the azure dew bracelet. Until now, she still couldn't move freely. She still did not sense Old Man Tsang's existence. If Old Man Tsang was here, then Tang Beiyuan's idea would work. Temporarily, I still can't find a way to extract a large amount of mental power. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. Let me think of a way to try. He walked out of Tang Beiyuan's room. Yi Qing Luo then walked towards the direction of the room which she stayed in last night. In the main hall, Dmo Xian was releasing his profound energy to help the soldiers purify the miasma within their bodies. The entire hall was silent. Yi Qing Luo didn't make any noise to disturb him as she quietly returned to her room and quietly closed the door. She sat down on the bed. He slowly raised his wrist. On her fair and slender wrist, the circular pattern resembling the petals of a cherry blossom was clearly visible. Vaguely, there seemed to be a bright red light flowing between the patterns. Staring. Yi Qing Luo's gaze suddenly went into a daze. There seemed to be a wisp of white smoke floating in front of her, looking at her with a benevolent smile. That dignified yet concerned voice reverberated in her ears. Little Luo. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as the tip of her nose suddenly turned sour. She unconsciously looked in the direction of the white smoke and extended her other hand. Her voice was choked with emotion. Old Man Tsang. Old Man Tsang, however, her sobbing voice came to an abrupt halt at this moment. She stretched out her hand, but missed. The white smoke in front of him turned into a gentle breeze and dissipated. Old Tsang. Yi Qing Luo cried out again. He raised his hands and tried desperately to touch the space in front of him. However, the only thing his hands could touch was air. She froze on the spot. He stared blankly for a long time before coming back to his senses. Am I hallucinating again? Yes. If it wasn't a hallucination, how could Old Man Tsang's spiritual body dissipate with just a touch? Yi Qing Luo's tensed-up emotions, at this instance, were all unloaded. She really missed Old Man Tsang. Chapter 3147. Yi Qing Luo's arm drooped down powerlessly. Her slender fingers, little by little, unconsciously stroked the decorative design of the azure dew bracelet. In his mind, he recalled the time when he was in the Miao tribe. She was determined to terminate the contract with Old Man Tsang and hand him over to Dmo Xian. There was a place in his heart that felt like it had been ruthlessly pierced by a needle. Ding! Suddenly, he felt a scorching heat on his wrist. Yi Qing Luo's fingers trembled as she looked down. The pattern on the wristband was like water ripples, and layers upon layers of ripples began to appear. As the cherry blossom patterns floated, the scorching heat was also increasing. This change in the azure dew bracelet. This made Yi Qing Luo's eyes suddenly lit up. Old Man Tsang. Yi Qing Luo sat up straight and her fingers once again covered the flowing pattern. As soon as he finished speaking, Yi Qing Luo only felt a flash of white light in front of her, and she felt blinded for a moment. The next moment, the place in front of him was already extremely familiar. It was the inside of the azure dew bracelet. Her divine sense entered the interior of the azure dew bracelet once more. Yi Qing Luo couldn't suppress the excitement in her heart as she took a few quick steps forward. She looked around at the vast expanse of whiteness, searching for the figure she was looking for. Old Tsang. It's you're back, aren't you? Her voice echoed within the azure dew bracelet. However, there was no response at all. Furthermore, in all of the places that Old Man Tsang liked to hang out in, he was nowhere to be seen. The inside of the azure dew bracelet was empty, except for her. There was nothing else. No other creature. There was no aura of Old Man Tsang. She couldn't sense Old Tsang's aura within the azure dew bracelet. Since it wasn't you who returned, then why was I able to enter the azure dew bracelet again? Yi Qing Luo's pink lips trembled slightly as she faintly spoke in a low voice. She lifted her wrist again. He stared at the floating patterns that seemed to be alive. She couldn't help but laugh, extremely bitter. Could it be that you want me to learn how to control the azure dew bracelet myself? Answer her. There were still only echoes from all four directions. Yi Qing Luo slowly closed her eyes as her body fell backwards. Her slender back was pressed tightly against the cold ground. He slowly raised his right hand and placed it on his head. But Old Man Tsang, I'd rather you personally teach me how to control the azure dew bracelet. You're my only senior in this strange world, she sighed faintly. The flowing cherry blossom patterns blocked her eyes. As the bewitching red light flowed, it was as if they were about to seep into her eyes. Yi Qing Luo felt a stinging pain in her eyes. She closed her eyes. When he opened his eyes again, he was met with a pair of eyes that were as large as copper bells. Eyes? 2 huge golden eyes? What is this? Yi Qing Luo abruptly flipped herself up from the ground, as she looked towards the direction of her eyes vigilantly. It's you. When Yi Qing Luo saw that pair of eyes clearly, the expression on her face was filled with astonishment. In front of him was a huge cauldron, the bronze furnace. However, it was covered in a dazzling golden light. The pair of eyes she had just seen. It was the 2 golden eyes on the body of the cauldron. Yi Qing Luo pointed at the cauldron in front of her. Cauldron dragon? So it's you. The inside of the azure dew bracelet should be an independent space. Apart from her surprise, there shouldn't be anyone who could appear in the azure dew bracelet's independent space. This cauldron in front of her. Chapter 3148. Yi Qing Luo's face immediately lit up. She pounced forward and hugged the cauldron dragon. Cauldron dragon, you're still here. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her arms, but could only hug a small totem of the cauldron dragon. The cauldron dragon's glittering golden eyes shifted. Then, a golden light flashed. The cauldron dragon's body had transformed into a height similar to Yi Qing Luo's. Master, I've always been in the Azure Dew Bracelet. Unless you summon me, I can't leave this place. The cauldron dragon's steady voice contained a trace of helplessness. So, in his master's eyes within the Azure Dew Bracelet, only Old Man Tsang? After Yi Qing Luo met Cauldron Dragon's slightly resentful eyes, her hands hugged the cauldron even tighter. Every time I come to the Azure Dew Bracelet, it seems like I've never heard you open your mouth. Right now I'm just excited, just excited. What kind of excitement? Cauldron Dragon shot her a sidelong glance without giving her any face. Are you excited to see me, or are you excited for some other reason? Yi Qing Luo gave an embarrassed smile, as her tone sounded slightly coquettish. Both. She paused and continued. Ever since that battle with the Miao tribe, I had no way of entering the interior of the Azure Dew Bracelet. I don't know why, but I suddenly came today. To be able to see you, Cauldron Dragon, within the Azure Dew Bracelet, I'm definitely excited. She paused for a moment, then raised her head and looked into the pair of golden eyes. But there are other reasons too. You want to know where Old Song is, right? Cauldron Dragon didn't beat around the bush with her. Yi Qing Luo's hands immediately loosened, her eyes nervously looking at Cauldron Dragon. You know that Old Man Tsang knows where he is? The Cauldron Dragon was silent for a moment. Master, although I shouldn't criticize any of your decisions as your contracted furnace, there are still some words that I must say. Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyelids and sighed softly. I know what you want to say. This time, you are indeed in the wrong. Cauldron Dragon's tone became solemn and respectful. The pair of golden eyes embedded in the cauldron also became unusually serious. The Azure Dew Bracelet is not only a divine artifact, it is also a home that belongs to us. Ever since you formed the blood contract with the Azure Dew Bracelet, we, who were in deep slumber within the Azure Dew Bracelet, also woke up. We followed you and experienced so much. To us, this is the same as you giving us a home. When you decided to abandon the Azure Dew Bracelet, when you decided to face death alone, you were also abandoning us, abandoning our family. When you made this decision, even I had a feeling of being abandoned and hurt. Don't even mention how much pain Old Man Tsang, who loved you as if you were his own granddaughter, felt in his heart. Yi Qing Luo's eyelashes fluttered as she lowered her head. You don't need to apologize to me, said the Cauldron Dragon, interrupting her. The person you should apologize to is Old Man Tsang. Old Man Tsang, he's still here. He's still here, right? Yi Qing Luo suddenly raised her head, her eyes staring unblinkingly at Cauldron Dragon. Cauldron Dragon, tell me where he is. How should I see him? Cauldron Dragon looked deeply at her, not speaking for a long time. It was silent for a long time. Its pair of golden eyes slowly closed. Old Man Tsang didn't allow me to tell you, but I believe that you should know these things. Chapter 3149. Cauldron Dragon's tone was heavy. Met with Old Man Tsang exhausting his own mental strength to forcefully stop the contract with you, Yi Qing Luo's complexion faintly paled. Her slender fingers suddenly tightened. Her round fingernails deeply embedded themselves into her palm. Old Man Tsang was a spirit body, and could become the Azure Dew Bracelet's guardian spirit. What he relied on was mental strength. Her method of communication with Old Man Tsang was also through mental strength. Exhausting mental strength, to stop the contract from being dissolved. It was the same as burning her vitality to dissolve the blood contract. Yi Qing Luo suddenly lifted her wrist. Her fingers trembled as they covered the decorative design that represented the Azure Dew Bracelet on her wrist. Cherry blossom petals floated on her fingertips like flowing clouds. The tip of her nose suddenly turned sour. Cauldron Dragon, so, after I woke up, the Azure Dew Bracelet didn't dissolve the contract with me because of this reason? Old Man Tsang, who had exhausted all of his mental strength. He would completely disappear from this world. even his soul wouldn't exist anymore. Therefore, the current conclusion was, the Azure Dew bracelet still maintained the contract relationship with her. And Old Man Tsang was already gone? After these words were spat out from her mouth with great difficulty, Yiqing Luo practically exhausted all the strength in her body. The intense sourness irritated her eyes. Her fists clenched even tighter as she forcefully endured. His eyes and the tip of his nose were all red. Cauldron Dragon looked at Yiqing Luo, who seemed like she wanted to cry, and immediately said, "Of course not." A glimmer of hope flashed in Yiqing Luo's eyes. Cauldron Dragon said, "Although Old Man Tsang exhausted his mental strength, he is still in the Azure Dew bracelet. Then, I am unable to sense his existence now because his mental strength is insufficient." Yiqing Luo opened her mouth with great difficulty, her voice extremely dull and hoarse. "This is also one of the reasons," Cauldron Dragon said. "What other reasons?" Yiqing Luo's hope rose as she eagerly asked. Cauldron Dragon hesitated for a moment, as if hesitating whether to say it or not. Yiqing Luo's heart was already endlessly anxious. Her slender brows knitted into a ball as she single-handedly supported the cauldron body. "What other reasons are there? What happened to Old Man Tsang?" Cauldron Dragon glanced at her. In the end, he seemed to have decided on something. He let out a long sigh. In the process of Old Man Tsang consuming his mental force, he was stopped by an accident. Old Man Tsang's attempt to stop the dissolution of the contract was also stopped. Accident? Yiqing Luo's hand trembled, and immediately hope was ignited. Then where is Old Man Tsang? How can I sense his existence? Yes, an accident. Cauldron Dragon only emphasized the word accident. He didn't have any intention of elaborating. Although this accident prevented Old Man Tsang from harming himself, Old Man Tsang's action of exhausting his mental strength really did happen. His spiritual body was affected. In addition to this accident, if you want to see him again, perhaps it will be a bit difficult. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips tightly. Her pale lips were stained with a trace of blood. "What can I do for him?" Cauldron Dragon didn't reply. He used his pair of golden eyes to stare at her for a good while before asking in reply, "Master, is it because you want Old Man Tsang to awaken, because you need him to teach you how to freely extract the nether-een mental strength, or because you're worried about him?" Yiqing Luo's slender brows immediately knitted together. Chapter 3150. Light surged within Yiqing Luo's charming eyes. Her slender fingers were tightly clenched into a fist, tightly clenched. Cauldron Dragon's questioning. It was like a ruthless slap on her face. Indeed, Cauldron Dragon didn't doubt her character from the bottom of his heart. But Cauldron Dragon needed to hear her answer personally. This already showed that Cauldron Dragon's trust towards her already had a gap. She didn't blame Cauldron Dragon. If it was her gap would perhaps be even greater than Cauldron Dragon's. After all, this time, she had indeed gone too far. Especially when she heard that Old Man Tsang's soul had almost flown away and scattered because of her decision, she became increasingly aware of her own selfishness and excesses. Wholeheartedly, she only thought about her own love and Ah Xian. But she had neglected, she couldn't leave Ah Xian, and couldn't bear the days without him. Then, those people who cared about her and valued her. How could they leave her? How could they bear the days without her? This was her fault. She indeed deserved the punishment of being distrusted like this. Gradually, Yiqing Luo's delicate body went limp. Her taut muscles and slender fingers were powerlessly hanging at her side. She raised her head again. Her reddened eyes met Cauldron Dragon's golden pupils without blinking. She opened her mouth. "Old Man Tsang is not only my master, he is also my kin, my family. I want him to return to my side, because I need him as a family member." Cauldron Dragon's solemn eyes finally softened a bit. Old Man Tsang's spirit body is fine. It finally relented. Yiqing Luo's heart didn't relax because of this. She tightly pursed her lips and asked worriedly, "Spirit body is fine? Then why can't I see him in the azure dew bracelet?" Just as she finished asking her question, a voice suddenly rang out. Without waiting for Cauldron Dragon's reply, she anxiously continued to ask, "Spirit body is fine, then is his mental power greatly damaged? Is he in any danger?" Yiqing Luo continued to ask, "Earlier you said, Old Man Tsang has awakened? In other words, Old Man Tsang is currently in a state of deep slumber? Then, stop." Cauldron Dragon was somewhat stupefied by Yiqing Luo's question, without even panting. He raised his voice. "Now listen to me." Yiqing Luo immediately shut her mouth as she fixed her eyes on it. Cauldron Dragon said, "I am unable to say much about Old Man Tsang's current situation. Right now he was indeed in a deep slumber. As for when he will wake up, that will depend on his willpower and Heaven's will." Willpower? Heaven's will? What does this mean? Yiqing Luo's heart trembled violently. Although that accident stopped Old Man Tsang, to Old Man Tsang, it also caused a great impact. Cauldron Dragon said vaguely, "You don't need to worry. At present, it's hard to say whether this impact is good or bad." Yiqing Luo knew that Cauldron Dragon didn't want to tell her the details of that day. She did not intend to pursue the matter. However, were the Cauldron Dragon's words just a guess, or were they just lies to make her feel at ease? "Master, no matter how much you think about Old Man Tsang's situation, it's of no use." Cauldron Dragon saw that Yiqing Luo didn't speak for a long time, so he continued, "Today, Master didn't need to connect with Old Man Tsang's mental power to enter the Azure Dew Bracelet. This is already a very good omen." Chapter 3151. Old Man Tsang is the Azure Dew Bracelet's guardian. Your mental strength is connected to him. In the past, you entered the Azure Dew Bracelet through fusing with Old Man Tsang's mental strength magnetic field. Cauldron Dragon explained. Yiqing Luo looked at the Azure Dew Bracelet pattern on her wrist in astonishment. These days, she had been unable to enter the Azure Dew Bracelet. She was also unable to form a connection with the Azure Dew Bracelet. Was it because the magnetic field connection between her and Old Man Tsang was broken? Then, she suddenly entered the Azure Dew Bracelet today. What was the reason? Her and Old Man Tsang's magnetic field connection was re-established? We have no way of knowing the reason at the moment. Cauldron Dragon said. However, this is at least a good start. This also shows that Old Man Tsang's consciousness is very likely slowly recovering. Yiqing Luo's charming eyes slowly surveyed the surroundings. Her slender fingers lightly stroked her wrist. It was as if she was recalling all the scenes of Old Man Tsang being here through this vast expanse of whiteness. Cauldron Dragon didn't make a sound to disturb her. After a long time, Yiqing Luo closed her eyes. The expression on her face also gradually recovered its tranquility. When she opened her eyes again, the surging emotions in her eyes had also dissipated, and she had calmed down. "I understand." Yiqing Luo's gaze returned to Cauldron Dragon. "I will wait for Old Man Tsang to return. If there is anything I can help with, please tell me. I also want to do something for him." Cauldron Dragon's golden eyes blinked. It seemed to be somewhat astonished at Yiqing Luo's calmness. It looked at Yiqing Luo face to face for a long time before opening its mouth. If Master can truly be at ease and work hard to increase her strength, this will be the greatest help to him. Amen, I'll remember. Yiqing Luo nodded. Cauldron Dragon still wanted to say something, but a golden light flashed in the depths of its eyes. In the end, it still didn't say anything. One person and one cauldron sunk into silence. 4 eyes met. After a moment of silence, Yiqing Luo was the first to break the silence. "I'll leave first." Cauldron Dragon. Amen. Yiqing Luo turned around and walked a few steps towards the vast expanse of whiteness before pausing. "If Old Man Tsang has any news, no matter if it's good or bad, please tell me." Cauldron Dragon was silent for a moment. "All right." Yiqing Luo curled her lips towards Cauldron Dragon, revealing a faint smile. She turned around again. But very quickly she turned back. Beneath the hazy white mist, a pair of eyes that were as resplendent as stars gazed at the Cauldron Dragon like torches. Cauldron Dragon's golden eyes contained a trace of unconcealable panic. The fleeting panic fell into Yiqing Luo's eyes. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. She knew that Cauldron Dragon was definitely hiding something from her. This matter, it must also be related to Old Man Song. It was just that Cauldron Dragon wasn't willing to say. Even if she interrogated him, there would be no result. She could only pretend that she didn't sense the Cauldron Dragon's abnormality. Is there anything else? Cauldron Dragon's calm voice resounded. It was also because of his guilty conscience. Cauldron Dragon's voice sounded especially dignified as a member of the Dragon Clan. Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with smiles as her face revealed a gentle smile. She looked at the Cauldron Dragon and said word by word, "Whether it's Old Man Song, you, or the Purgatory Pagoda, everything within this azure dew bracelet is my home, all of you are my family." Cauldron Dragon's golden pupils suddenly constricted. Chapter 31:52. Cauldron Dragon's golden pupils flickered and shrank again. It wanted to speak. However, when he looked into the young girl's eyes, which were shining with brilliance, it couldn't make the slightest sound. Just like that, it locked eyes with the young girl. After a long while, the young girl withdrew her gaze and stepped into the boundless whiteness. That blazing figure. Within the white fog, it was faintly discernible, until that figure completely disappeared within the azure dew bracelet. Cauldron Dragon's widened golden pupils faintly fluctuated for a moment. Golden light flickered. The cauldron body once again transformed into an enormous dragon cauldron. "I'll have to trouble you, Cauldron Dragon." A gentle and graceful voice was especially clear in this silent space. Hearing this voice, Cauldron Dragon's gaze suddenly became respectful. "Is it really okay to tell her about Old Man Song?" That graceful voice was ethereal and faintly discernible. "You can't always let her act recklessly. You should let her understand that after she acts recklessly, someone will bear the consequences for her." Although the words were filled with reproach towards Yiqing Luo, but one could clearly hear the amiability in the tone. Cauldron Dragon's golden pupils drooped, as if recalling Yiqing Luo's final smile when she looked at it. It sighed softly. Come to think of it, that girl should have already understood this. The air was silent. Cauldron Dragon asked again, "Then, Old Man Song can he still wake up?" "Yes." The graceful voice seemed to blend into the air, light and faintly discernible. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear this voice. "Old Man Song will wake up, but everything depends on fate. Depends on the fate between Old Man Song and Luo." Yiqing Luo opened her eyes. She was still in the room where she rested last night. In her mind, she recalled what Cauldron Dragon had just said. She lifted her wrist and lightly stroked the azure dew bracelet. "Old Man Song, I will definitely let you wake up. The things I promised you, I will absolutely not break my word," she softly murmured, the light in her eyes becoming increasingly resolute. She looked at the time. She had actually already stayed in the azure dew bracelet for nearly 2 hours. Yiqing Luo walked out of the room, preparing to take a look at Dmo Xian and those soldiers who were infected by the miasma. But, standing at the railing of the second floor, Yiqing Luo surveyed the surroundings but didn't see Dmo Xian's figure at all. The injured soldiers were also bandaged and laid on the ground covered with straw to rest. "Where is Xian?" Yiqing Luo's figure leapt up and directly leapt from the railing to the first floor. Her appearance immediately attracted everyone's attention. "Lady Knight, no, I should call her Lady Emperor." The soldiers immediately greeted him respectfully. "How are your bodies feeling?" Yiqing Luo smiled at them. The soldiers were grateful. "Thank you for your concern. The Overlord has cleared the miasma from our bodies. As long as we rest for a while, we can go into battle again." Yi Qing Luo's vision swept past everyone's faces. The black aura between their eyebrows had indeed completely dissipated. She curled her lips and said warmly, "There's no hurry to go into battle and kill the enemy. The external injuries on your bodies need to rest for at least half a month's time." The smiles on the soldiers' faces stiffened and immediately became resolute. "The injuries on our bodies are not a hindrance." Chapter 31:53. The soldiers froze. Yi Qing Luo continued to smile, but her tone revealed a calm and unruffled boldness. The main hall fell into silence. Yi Qing Luo's voice slowed down but was sonorous. "A Xian can save you once, but it doesn't mean that he will save you a second time. So if you want to protect your own continent, then let yourself recover quickly and not try to show off and drag your own brother down." The soldiers were all tensed up as they clenched their fists tightly. They looked deeply at Yi Qing Luo's direction. The expressions on their faces were changing bit by bit. Towards Yi Qing Luo's words, they had no way to refute. Yi Qing Luo didn't continue saying anything as she walked out of the inn directly. Outside the inn, it was a mess. The entire place was in ruins and smoke filled the air. It was totally different from the Valley Wind City that she had seen in her memory. She raised her eyes as she looked at the city wall not too far away. The great general and those soldiers who were standing upright were guarding this city vigilantly. This was the last city in the South Waves continent. The people from the secluded palace would attack any time. If Valley Wind City was attacked, the South Waves continent would completely become a subsidiary force of the secluded palace. The secluded palace's plan would then advance a step further. "Qing Luo." A lady's soft voice was heard from behind. Yi Qing Luo turned around and saw Tang Beiyuan, who was dressed in a blue long dress, walking over. Tang Beiyuan said, "The Imperial Palace's disciples have found the secret base which the secluded palace had stationed in the South Waves continent. The Overlord has brought some men over to scout." "Secret base?" Yi Qing Luo was stunned. "Surely this isn't a scheme of the secluded palace. According to a reliable source, it shouldn't be." Tang Beiyuan shook her head. "The Overlord will head over personally, so it shouldn't be fake." "Where is it? I'll go over now." Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she asked anxiously. "The Overlord had specially instructed you to stay here and wait for him to return." Tang Beiyuan pulled Yi Qing Luo's wrist. "The Overlord will not let anything happen to himself, don't worry." Although she had 100% confidence in DMO Xian's ability. But it was absolutely impossible to say that she wasn't worried. Tang Beiyuan naturally saw the worry on Yi Qing Luo's face as she walked to Yi Qing Luo's side and stood still. Following that, he and Yi Qing Luo looked towards the direction of the city walls. "To be honest, I'm very envious of your relationship with the D-Zune." An envious smile appeared on Tang Beiyuan's beautiful face. She glanced sideways slightly as she gazed at Yi Qing Luo's side profile. "The current Lord D-Zune has really changed a lot. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed that this is the same Lord D-Zune." Beiyuan Yi Qing Luo could hear the envy in Tang Beiyuan's tone, as well as that undetectable sorrow. She recalled what DMO Xian had told her about Tang Beiyuan's fiancé. He had been in the Imperial Palace for so long. Yi Qing Luo had never seen Tang Beiyuan's fiancé before, not knowing what he looked like. Tang Beiyuan smiled bitterly. She raised her hand and pressed it against her chest as she continued to speak word by word. "In the hearts of the women of the Imperial Palace, Qin Wentian, D-Zune was like a high and mighty god. No matter who it was, they were just a speck of dust in front of D-Zune. But you're different. DMO Xian's gentleness towards you, that attitude where you're held in the palm of your hand, afraid that you'll fall, or in the mouth, afraid that you'll melt, has gradually made DMO Xian become more and more popular. I've heard many people ridiculing that DMO Xian is cold and emotionless, a person without feelings." Chapter 31:54. Tang Beiyuan's tone became increasingly bitter. That bitter taste, even if he tried his best to hide it, he could clearly feel it. Actually, it's not that he's cold and heartless, it's not that he doesn't have feelings. It's just that the only person he warms is you. Tang Beiyuan could not help but laugh. Her eyes were filled with a sense of loss. He has given all his love to you. He only has eyes and heart for you. Beiyuan Yiqing Luo held Tang Beiyuan's hand. Her hand was cold. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased as she placed one hand on her shoulder. You and your fiancé, what's the matter? Tang Beiyuan's words sounded very strange. If others were to hear this, they might have thought that Tang Beiyuan was deeply in love with Diamo Xian, and seeing Diamo Xian loving Yiqing Luo made her feel jealous, etc. But Yiqing Luo was very clear. Even if she had never met Tang Beiyuan's fiancé, she was very clear about everything. Tang Beiyuan's deep love for that man. Why would Tang Beiyuan show such an envious and bitter expression? Apart from that fiancé, Yiqing Luo could not think of anyone else. Tang Beiyuan slowly raised her head. Her eyes were red from holding back her tears as she stared fixedly at her. After a while, Tang Beiyuan said in a hoarse voice, "Do you know why I followed you to the South Wave continent?" Yiqing Luo looked at her silently, waiting for her next words. Tang Beiyuan closed her eyes. "He was injured in the last mission, and I didn't want him to risk his life on the South Wave continent, so I came." Yiqing Luo rubbed her head. "For your fiancé's Beijing, you're very brave." "Yes, but he will never be able to see my bravery." Tang Beiyuan forced a smile and snorted softly. "Perhaps I'm not the one who knows how to warm him." Yiqing Luo heard the exhaustion in her tone as she gently pulled her into her arms and patted her back. "Don't let your imagination run wild." Tang Beiyuan, who was in Yiqing Luo's arms, didn't say a word for a long time. But Yiqing Luo could feel that the sorrowful loneliness from the lady was extremely thick. It seemed that after everything was over, she had to find a chance. He wanted to see Tang Beiyuan's fiancé. Only when she saw that man could she be sure that Tang Beiyuan would be happy with him. Yiqing Luo gently patted the person in her arms. After a while, Tang Beiyuan suddenly looked up. A pair of beautiful eyes looked at her with a smile. "Now, do you still want to look for His Majesty?" There was no trace of loneliness or sorrow in her beautiful eyes that were filled with smiles. It was as if the bitterness from before was just a facade. Yiqing Luo was stunned and was about to open her mouth. Tang Beiyuan grabbed her hand and winked mischievously. "If you still want to look for the Dizun, you'll be provoking me. I'm all alone and I don't have a fiancé by my side to love me." His tone was full of grievance. Yiqing Luo, she stared at Tang Bin's face for a long time before she held her forehead and said, "Just now were you trying to divert my attention? In order to prevent her from finding Diamo Xian? So you purposely put on a bitter drama?" Tang Beiyuan's eyelashes fanned as she looked at her innocently. No, I'm speaking from the bottom of my heart. I'm really envious of you guys, very envious, very envious." As she said that, she stuck out her tongue mischievously at her. Following that, she turned around and jogged towards the direction of the inn. Chapter 3155. The more Tang Beiyuan said so, the more he thought about it, the more it proved that she was indeed trying to stop him from going to look for Diamo Xian, and intentionally put on a bitter drama. But others couldn't tell. There was no way she couldn't tell. Tang Beiyuan's words and emotions came from the bottom of her heart. Just so she wouldn't worry. As for the deliberate act, it was just a pitiful play. This lass, sometimes it really made one's heart ache. From the looks of it, Tang Beiyuan's fiancé indeed, she had to find an opportunity to go and have a look. After Tang Beiyuan's antics, Yiqing Luo had indeed dismissed the idea of looking for Diamo Xian. She glanced in Tang Beiyuan's direction before walking towards the city gate. Beiyuan didn't want her to worry. She would pretend that she didn't know anything. At this moment, Beiyuan also wanted to be alone for a while. Yiqing Luo's feet had just lifted up. Soon after, he heard a soft chuckle coming from not far away. Yiqing Luo frowned as she looked towards the direction of the laughter alertly. In the messy street stood a figure wrapped in a black robe. Even his head was covered with a black veil, making it impossible to see his face clearly. Yiqing Luo's expression congealed. When did this person appear? How could she not sense the existence of this person? Her perception couldn't sense this person? Miss Yi, you're really naive. The black-robed and black-veiled figure laughed softly. Her tone was full of ridicule. The sound was ear-piercing, like the sound of two sharp objects colliding and rubbing against each other. Yiqing Luo dug her ears and frowned slightly. Who are you? Judging from this person's stature. Yiqing Luo's initial judgment was that the person under the black robe should be a lady. It was just that the voice was so unpleasant that it was hard to distinguish. Heh, the black-robed man chuckled again, just a little commoner who was saved by the soldiers of Valley Wind City. Commoners? Yiqing Luo stared at the black-robed man. She could not sense any trace of profound energy from the black-robed man's body. Indeed, he looked like an ordinary person. But Yiqing Luo didn't believe it. A commoner was able to avoid her senses. How could a commoner be so calm and composed in front of her? Just as Yiqing Luo was in deep thoughts, suddenly, he heard a hoarse and anxious voice. Little Feng. Xiao Feng. Not good, not good. Granny Wang is foaming again. An old man rushed out of an abandoned mansion not far away. The soldiers at the door immediately supported the staggering old man. When the old man saw the black-robed man, his face was full of excitement. Little Feng, quick! Come here. The black-robed man took a look at that old man and looked at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo seemed to have heard the black-robed man's chuckle. Then, the black-robed man's sharp and unpleasant voice rang out, I still wanted to be friends with Lady Yi and have a good chat. It seems like I can only postpone it. With that, the black-robed man turned around and walked toward the old man. The old man looked at the black-robed man with hope in his eyes. Xiao Feng, only you can save old woman Wang. You must save her. The two of them walked side by side into that abandoned mansion. Yiqing Luo stared at their departing figures as she frowned slightly. That mansion was Valley Wind City's safety zone. Those commoners who were still alive were arranged in the safety zone, waiting for rescue. That black-robed man earlier. Chapter 3156. From the attitude of the soldiers and that shabbily dressed old man towards that black-robed man. That black-robed man should have stayed in the safety zone for a long period of time. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. Staring at the direction of the safety zone, she pondered for a moment. She lifted her feet and walked towards the safety zone. The soldiers guarding at the entrance naturally recognized Yiqing Luo. It could be said that in the entire Valley Wind City, there was no one who didn't recognize Yiqing Luo and her bunch of brothers in the world group. The soldier revealed a joyous expression. Imperial Madam, you're going to the safety zone to take a look? I'll lead the way for you. Yiqing Luo waved her hand as her gaze passed through the open door and looked into the huge mansion. From this glance there were at least 200 to 300 people in the huge mansion. Men and women were all huddled together. Yiqing Luo's gaze looked in and coincidentally saw a corner of the huge mansion which was filled with people. The black-robed man's back was facing her direction. There were quite a number of people who kept rushing towards that direction. Is Imperial Madam looking at Miss Xiao Feng? The soldier saw Yiqing Luo staring at that direction and hurriedly opened his mouth to chat. Yiqing Luo nodded slightly. She's called Xiao Feng? That's right. The soldier also looked over and his tone was filled with admiration. Miss Xiao Feng and Imperial Madam are the same. Both are kind-hearted people. Kind-hearted? Earlier this young lady called Xiao Feng. When she was facing her. That tone didn't seem like a kind-hearted person. Ever since Miss Xiao Feng was picked up from outside the city by the Grand General, our casualties have reduced by a lot. The soldier continued, Miss Xiao Feng is an outstanding doctor and the commoners in the safety zone have all received her grace. Yiqing Luo's slender brows rose slightly. From the sound of it, she indeed sounded like a kind-hearted person. Yi-Ching Luo's lips curled slightly. "I'll go in to take a look." The soldier naturally wouldn't stop her. Yi-Ching Luo walked directly towards the direction where the crowd was surrounding. "Imperial Madam, this safety zone is dirty. If those commoners touch Imperial Madam, this—" That soldier saw Yi-Ching Luo walking towards a crowded place as he called out softly behind her. In this safe zone, it was already good enough for the civilians to survive and fill their stomach. Before the end of the war, they would not be able to take a bath or change their clothes. Each and every one of the commoners was dirty and messy. One could smell the stench on their bodies even without looking at them. Yi-Ching Luo was a priceless treasure. The soldier's words didn't stop Yi-Ching Luo. They could only watch as Yi-Ching Luo squeezed into the crowd. The people were crowded and bustling. The dust on his body had more or less landed on Yi-Ching Luo. Fortunately, Yi-Ching Luo didn't mind. The soldiers heaved a sigh of relief, but their eyes were still concentrated on Yi-Ching Luo's direction. Yi-Ching Luo squeezed into the crowd. His gaze was attracted by Xiaofeng's figure. An old granny dressed in coarse clothes lay on the ground surrounded by the crowd. Her entire body was dirty and messy, and she was twitching in pain. The old lady's mouth was still spitting white foam. Xiaofeng squatted beside the old lady, one hand on the old lady's wrist and the other on her heart. "Old Madam Wang, can you hear me?" Xiaofeng asked. His voice was still the same as the sound of sharp weapons clashing, but it was obviously much softer. It was totally different from the ridicule when facing her. This Xiaofeng. Chapter 3157. Xiaofeng asked a few more questions. Granny Wang didn't respond. Her body was twitching more and more violently. Xiaofeng immediately increased the strength of his palm and pressed hard on old woman Wang's chest. His other hand reached for old maidservant Wang's chin and held it firmly. Old maid Wang's body convulsed violently. Then, like a fish that had lost its water, it went limp. However, he had also stopped convulsing. Seeing this, the onlookers heaved a sigh of relief. "Miss Feng, it's all thanks to you. Fortunately, you're here. Old maid Wang is fine. Miss Lin Feng, go and rest. Leave this place to us." The commoners looked at Xiaofeng with gratitude in their eyes. He completely regarded Feng as a living bodhisattva. Xiaofeng didn't say anything. Instead, he placed his hand on old maid Wang's chest. Then, he used his other hand to clean the white bubbles on old maid Wang's mouth, not caring about her sloppiness. This action once again made the commoners feel grateful. Among the crowd, Yi-Ching Luo's slender brows did not relax for a long time. Xiaofeng did look like a doctor who practiced medicine to save the world. Judging from her actions and her attitude towards old maidservant Wang, there were no other emotions in his body. There was not a single mistake to be found. After dealing with old maid Wang, Xiaofeng stood up. The commoners at the side immediately handed over a clean handkerchief. Xiaofeng wiped his hands and stood up. "Grandma Wang is fine now." The surrounding commoners once again expressed their gratitude and praise. Xiaofeng was about to leave the crowd. When he raised his head, he saw Yi-Ching Luo who was standing in the crowd. Their eyes met through the black veil. Yi-Ching Luo could clearly feel that Xiaofeng seemed to have smiled. Then, he followed the crowd and headed in another direction. It was a corner under the eaves. This corner was surrounded by sheds. There was a wooden table and a wooden chair inside. At the side, there was a bed that could fit a person, with a gauze curtain hanging over it. In this destitute and impoverished safety zone, this kind of place could definitely be considered as the best. Xiaofeng walked over and sat on the wooden chair. Countless commoners immediately rushed forward. Yi-Ching Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. She was sure that Xiaofeng had seen her just now outside the mansion. Xiaofeng obviously had something to say to her. Now that he saw her, he was pretending to be mysterious? This woman called Xiaofeng. What was her objective? Just as Yi-Ching Luo was staring at Little Wind's direction, An old voice came from behind her. Beautiful young lady, are you new here? Yiqing Luo glanced sideways and saw the old man who ran outside the mansion earlier, calling Xiao Feng to save old maid Wang, looking at her with a smiling face. The old man didn't wait for Yiqing Luo's reply as he continued on his own. How pitiful, so pretty, you must be some family's missy. It's all right, it's all right. The people here are all good people. Saying that, she stretched out her hand and pulled Yiqing Luo's wrist. Let's go, I'll bring you to find a place to rest. Although this place is a little shabby, at least we can survive. In the face of survival, some dirt and mess can be tolerated. Yiqing Luo was directly dragged by the old man to another corner of the mansion. This corner was rather damp, and the ground was covered with layers of straw. There were also a few young girls sewing and patching at the side. Chapter 3158. This is a newcomer, please take care of her. The old man smiled as he instructed and squeezed towards Little Feng's direction. Looking at the old man's back, Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. The young lady sitting on one side got up and pulled Yiqing Luo to sit down. Don't be sad, it's not bad that we can survive. Actually, it's good to stay here, there's food and drink, and we just have to do some small things every day, it's not bitter. The young lady on the other side pushed the old sewing equipment over. That old lady is our steward here. We all call her Mistress Yang. In future we will have to rely on her for our food and drink. Seeing that Yiqing Luo was still staring at the direction of the old man and Little Feng, the other young ladies also understood. Although we are all refugees, but if we want to have a good life in the safety zone, it all depends on our own ability. Miss Little Feng's ability is strong and can save people, we can't be envious. Basically, every young lady who just came would be envious of Little Feng. Mentioning Little Feng, Yiqing Luo smiled. It seems you all respect Miss Little Feng? That's natural. The young ladies nodded hard. Our lives are all saved by Miss Little Feng. Yiqing Luo took the opportunity to ask, why did she wrap herself in the black robe? Have you seen her face? The young lady's smile froze. The few young ladies stared at Yiqing Luo for a long time. One of the young ladies pulled her hand and whispered, you can't say this sentence again, if others hear it, they will chase you out of the safety zone. It could be seen that in the hearts of this group of people, Little Feng occupied an extraordinary position. Miss Little Feng because of the battle in the southern continent, her face was scratched by the magical beasts, her entire face was ruined, so she covered her face with the black veil. The young lady leaned close to Yiqing Luo's ear and whispered, in the safety zone, you must not mention anything about Miss Little Feng's face. Yiqing Luo nodded thoughtfully. Disfigured by magical beasts? Yiqing Luo raised her brows and stared at Little Feng's direction with interest. It seemed like she wanted to see Little Feng's face through the black veil. The little girl hurriedly tugged at her. Don't look. If you make Miss Xiao Feng unhappy, maidservant Yang won't give you lunch. Thank you for your reminder. Yiqing Luo smiled at the young lady and immediately stood up. The little girl asked anxiously, where are you going? Don't wander around. There are many places in the safe zone that have been sprinkled with Miss Xiaofeng's special medicinal powder to expel the poisonous insects. If you come into contact with it, you'll be in trouble. Yiqing Luo smiled again, and without any hesitation, she left this secluded corner. After a series of understanding, Yiqing Luo could tell as well Xiaofeng's position in the safe zone. He also knew that this group of people regarded Feng as a god in their hearts. In other words, they were Xiaofeng's die-hard fans. Even if the monarch came in person, he might not be able to win the hearts of the people like Xiao Feng. However, she still couldn't believe it. This Xiaofeng was just as everyone had described, kind-hearted and kind-hearted. He had to admit it. This Xiaofeng's methods were indeed impressive. Yiqing Luo retracted her vision and walked towards the main door. Coincidentally, she bumped into maidservant Yang, who was walking towards her. Yiqing Luo's beauty could topple a city, anyone could remember her. Chapter 3159. Yiqing Luo casted a glance at her but didn't bother about her. She walked past Matron Yang and prepared to leave. Maidservant Yang's old face instantly turned ugly. "Little girl, didn't you hear what I said?" As Matron Yang said that, she took a big step forward and blocked Yiqing Luo's way once again. "What's the matter?" Yiqing Luo frowned as she asked calmly. Ever since she followed beside Miss Xiaofeng in the entire safety zone, who didn't smile at her, Matron Yang? Even the soldiers from Gu Feng's sect had to address her as Matron Yang when they saw her. Since when did anyone dared to show her such attitude? Matron Yang's face sunk. "Young lady, this isn't like your home, it's not a place for you to throw a tantrum. I pitied you so I arranged you to the most relaxed place, don't be ungrateful." Matron Yang's voice was very loud. Moreover, in the safety zone, she was someone whom everyone knew. Hearing Matron Yang's voice, the rest of the commoners' gazes all turned over. With the commoners backing her up, Matron Yang's back straightened even more. "I advise you, you'd better listen obediently, otherwise I'll reward you to those soldiers and let you be their prostitute." Matron Yang's words were getting uglier and uglier. Yiqing Luo originally didn't mind Matron Yang's obstruction. To her, Matron Yang was just an ordinary commoner. But Matron Yang just had to provoke her. Don't blame her for not giving any face. "Stare. What are you staring at for? A down-and-out young missy still has the cheek to throw a tantrum?" Matron Yang felt goosebumps from Yiqing Luo's stare. Matron Yang straightened her neck as she kept on scolding her. "Pa!" The crisp sound of a slap interrupted the clamor in the mansion. It also stopped Matron Yang's scolding. Matron Yang regained her senses from the pain as she suddenly raised her hand and covered her face. You dare to hit me?" Matron Yang didn't see the young lady in front of her making a move, but the burning pain on her face was extremely obvious. Even opening her mouth to speak, her muscles were in so much pain that she sucked in a breath of cold air. Yiqing Luo indifferently glanced at the palm print on Maidservant Yang's face as her voice was chilly. "You indeed deserve a beating. You. Grandma Yang was furious. Good. Are you kidding me? If I don't kill you today, I won't be called Old Woman Yang." She howled and pounced towards Yiqing Luo. But this pounce, before he even got close to the girl, Old Maid Yang felt her vision blur. He stumbled and fell heavily on the ground, face down. She fell all over her body and her bones were aching. While howling and crying in pain, he rolled on the ground again and again. She looked exactly like a shrew. Yiqing Luo was just 5 steps away from Maidservant Yang, as she stood with her arms crossed. Her beautiful face was devoid of any emotion. Her eyes were cold and calm, and no one could tell what she was thinking. She disdained to fight with ordinary people. He was not interested in making a move against an old man. That slap wasn't from her. Of course, she didn't detect where the energy from that slap came from. Looking at the hysterical appearance of Old Maid Yang in front of him, Yiqing Luo instinctively raised her eyes and looked past the crowd, towards the black-robed lady who was standing by her wooden table. 2 pairs of eyes seemed to meet. Yiqing Luo once again sensed that the lady's black robe revealed a smile. That smile seemed to be ridiculing her. Chapter 3160. Somehow they felt that earlier slap. It had something to do with the black-robed lady who was addressed as Xiaofeng. But currently everyone seemed to have confirmed it. That Madame Yang would fall onto the ground crying out in pain. This was what Yiqing Luo had done. Just as Yiqing Luo and Xiaofeng were exchanging glances, the surrounding commoners hurriedly helped Madame Yang up as they berated Yiqing Luo. "What's wrong with you, young lady? You look so good but your heart is so vicious, not even letting an elderly off. If anything happens to Madame Yang, don't even think of staying in this safety zone. Quick! Stop her, don't let her escape." The commoners started to flock forward, as they surrounded Yiqing Luo in the middle, one circle after another. All of them started to berate her fiercely. as though Yi Qing Luo was an unpardonable evil person. But, as they were berating her, the commoners realized that the main character who was being berated had no reaction at all. There wasn't even any change in her expression. Their berating and insults were like punches onto cotton. This made the commoners' chests suffocated with anger. Some commoners followed Yi Qing Luo's line of sight. They realized that Yi Qing Luo was using such an icy cold gaze to stare at the deity in their hearts. The suppressed anger in their chests was ignited at this instance. "What's that look? Who allowed you to use this kind of gaze to look at Miss Xiaofeng? If you scared Miss Xiaofeng or offended her, even if you died 1,000 times or 10,000 times, you still wouldn't be able to absolve yourself from the blame. What? You dare to stare at our Miss Xiaofeng? You hurt Miss Xiaofeng in the safety zone and you're still disrespecting her? You slut, you've already fallen to the safety zone and still treat yourself as a rich missy?" One sentence stirred up 1,000 ripples. The commoners' support towards Xiaofeng made their hatred towards Yi Qing Luo to explode. Especially the ladies, those who were jealous of Yi Qing Luo's looks, were even more impolite when they spoke. "In our place, having a beautiful face is of no use. Unless you're like Miss Xiaofeng in the safety zone, you have meritorious services. Otherwise, you're just an ordinary commoner. You're so arrogant. Do you think you can deceive a man to love you and stand up for you just because you have a face like a vixen? Let me tell you, in the safe zone, we don't care about looks, we only care about ability." Vixen. B***tch. Jealousy makes people ugly. The eyes of these women were blinded by jealousy. The words that came out of his mouth became more and more unbearable. Everyone was cursing. Yi Qing Luo didn't mind it at all. Instead, she noticed it. While the commoners were besieging and cursing her, from under Xiaofeng's black veil, there was an extremely obvious sense of pride. It wasn't an illusion. Instead, he was truly proud of himself, and that indistinct provocation. Yi Qing Luo was almost certain. This black-robed woman called Xiaofeng was indeed targeting her, and her hostility towards her was very deep. He thought back to what Xiaofeng had said at the entrance of the mansion. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly. This girl called Xiaofeng, what was his motive? Bang! Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo felt a weight on her arm. She saw a few ladies suddenly rushing forward and grabbing her arm. Their strength wasn't big, but they were good at being unreasonable. They locked Yi Qing Luo's hands tightly. Chapter 3161. Yi Qing Luo. She glanced sideways, squinting at the two ladies whose faces were distorted. The corners of her lips unconsciously twitched twice. Why did she feel? This group of people had a sense of déjà vu of the cult's braindead fans? All of them. Their brains had probably been brainwashed by Little Feng? Looked like she had to investigate this Little Feng. What was her background? Yi Qing Luo had no mood to tangle with this group of commoners. She was about to take action, to shake off the two ladies who were hugging her tightly. At the main door, a loud and deep voice was suddenly heard. "What are all of you arguing about? Is it because the days are too comfortable and you can't stay idle anymore?" This voice rang. The surrounding commoners suddenly went silent. Each of them shrunk their necks, and even their breathing became cautious. Even the two ladies who were holding Yi Qing Luo's limbs had their strength reduced. At the main door of the mansion, a tall and burly figure walked in. Behind him, there were 4 dignified soldiers dressed in armor, holding long spears. These 5 people had just stepped into the mansion. The surrounding commoners all revealed a joyful and grateful expression. "Grand General, why did you come personally?" Behind the crowd, Little Feng's slightly sharp voice was heard. She passed through the crowd and walked over slowly. A black robe, black muslin, as she walked, it was extremely elegant, like a black smoke lingering around her. The leader was the Grand General. When the Grand General saw Little Feng, the dignified expression on his face softened. "Miss Little Feng, it's been hard on you recently. It's not hard on Little Feng. Little Feng smiled slightly. It's hard on you, who are fighting in the front line. The Grand General also laughed a few times. Little Feng's vision floated behind the Grand General. I heard that the Grand General had just finished a battle yesterday, and successfully destroyed the birds and beasts, as well as that army sent by the secluded palace. I wonder if there's anything that requires my help? Generally, the Grand General or his subordinates came over. Or they came over to send supplies. Or they came over to invite Miss Little Feng to treat the injured soldiers. The Grand General waved his hand. Thank you, Miss Little Feng, for your concern. The soldiers are not in any serious trouble. Miss Little Feng just needs to take good care of these commoners. That's enough. Xiaofeng was obviously stunned. Beneath the black veil, a pair of black eyes flickered with a bright light. After hesitating for a while, he slowly nodded his head. It's good that you're fine. If he's not here to look for Miss Xiaofeng to treat the soldiers, then why did the general come here personally? The commoner asked in confusion. The general laughed. I'm here to pick someone up. Before he could finish speaking, the general's gaze fell on senior maid Yang, who was still lying on the ground in an extremely comical position, looking up at the general. The general couldn't help but laugh. Old maid Yang, what's going on with you? Old Madame Yang often helped the soldiers in the safe zone and distributed some resources. She was also someone who had a few words with the soldiers. Hearing the great general's question, Matron Yang's eyeballs rolled around as she fiercely shot a stare towards the direction of Yiqing Luo, who was being held down by the lady behind the crowd. Then, he slapped his thigh and started bawling. Chapter 3162. A new young lady? The general looked at the soldiers behind him in confusion. When had other commoners been sent here today? Now, all the commoners who were still alive in the entire Nanlon continent were gathered here. They had just experienced a great battle yesterday. How could there be other commoners being sent to the safe zone at this time? The soldiers also shook their heads. They were not sure. Mistress Yang was crying and did not notice the general's confusion. She continued to howl. It's only the first day and you've already beaten me. I can't straighten my back. My bones are all broken. When the general heard this, he immediately frowned. Beaten? In the safe zone, there were actually commoners who dared to beat people under their noses? This kind of behavior must not be encouraged. Senior servant Yang noticed the general's dark expression. She could not help but be secretly delighted. As expected, she was still useful in the hearts of these soldiers. After all, she had helped these soldiers out quite a bit. When had she not been the one who handled the expenditure of resources in the safe zone? Thinking of this, Mistress Yang's heart was even more confident. The general gave the two soldiers beside him a look. The soldiers stepped forward and helped Mistress Yang up from the ground. Senior Madame Yang was still groaning, but she did not forget to reprimand him. Great General, our safe zone doesn't dare to accept a woman like her. That's right, General. Why don't we put that young lady in your barracks? Immediately, a woman at the side echoed. This suggestion caused the other women to nod desperately in agreement. The general's expression became even more gloomy. What did it mean to put a woman in the barracks? There was no need to say it explicitly. Everyone understood. Although the barracks did need women as rewards and so on. However, this kind of woman was either an evil enemy or a sinner. How could they throw an innocent woman into the barracks? Great General, please don't be angry. That woman is very beautiful, comparable to a fairy that has descended to the mortal world. She will definitely satisfy you. The woman spoke with trepidation as she sized up the great general's expression. Mistress Yang stood up with the help of the soldiers. She purposely revealed the palm print on her face, crying as she said angrily, "It's not that we can't tolerate that woman, it's that woman. I really can't control her." The general's gaze swept past Senior Maid Yang's face. The expression on his face became extremely ugly. "You said, that woman looks like a fairy?" The woman's eyes lit up, but she couldn't help but curse in her heart. She was indeed a vixen. On the surface, he still agreed. Yes, yes, yes. She's absolutely beautiful, so beautiful that even us women are moved by her beauty. The general slapped his forehead. This is bad. The commoners were stunned. They did not understand what the great general meant. The general's expression was ugly. He widened his eyes and roared, "Where is the woman you were talking about? Quickly bring this general over." Beautiful as a fairy? Woman? A newcomer today? Putting all these pieces of information together, oh my God! The great general could only feel his entire body breaking out in cold sweat. Please, please don't let it be as he guessed. Otherwise, the great general did not even dare to think about it. Old Maid Yang was so frightened by the great general's gloomy and serious expression that her entire body trembled. He didn't dare to act pitiful anymore. Chapter 3163. The Grand General's sweat kept dripping down. He was praying in his heart as he moved his body stiffly, looking towards the direction which Old Maid Yang was pointing at. When his vision met that red robe which was like fire, like a blazing rose figure, the Grand General's pupils constricted. He stared at that figure as he sucked in a breath of cold air. The chilly feeling on his back made him feel as though he was frozen on the spot. The commoners saw the Grand General staring at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. The expression on his face also froze. Although the Grand General's face didn't look like the joy and infatuation after seeing a beauty. But the commoners still felt that the Grand General was stunned by Yi Qing Luo's beauty. The lady who suggested to send Yi Qing Luo to the military camp earlier coughed lightly as she plucked up her courage to open her mouth. Grand General, isn't this young lady extremely beautiful? If Grand General likes her, feel free to enjoy. As her words left her mouth, the expression on the Grand General's face turned uglier by several notches. In the end, his sharp gaze forced the woman to be unable to say anything else. The commoners looked at each other in dismay, unable to understand what the Grand General's expression meant. Just as everyone was bewildered, they saw the Grand General suddenly lifting his feet as he dashed towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. His speed was so fast, it stirred up the sand and dust beneath his feet. That impatient look, it made the few ladies subconsciously stare anxiously at Yi Qing Luo's face. They didn't forget to curse softly, "Vixen!" Bam! The two ladies who were cursing silently had just made a small sound. A powerful collision force came head-on. Two petite figures were sent flying by a single palm strike. Those two ladies were made of flesh, and after they fell onto the ground, they cried out miserably as they spat out blood. The commoners were so frightened that their faces turned pale as they speedily moved backward. This was the first time they saw the Grand General getting angry. This was the first time they saw the Grand General laying his hands on the commoners. "Shut up! All of you shut up!" The Grand General was so infuriated that he burst out with vulgarities. He quickly walked to Yi Qing Luo's side and pulled up the two ladies who were holding on to Yi Qing Luo, as he threw them out without any hesitation. He was so angry that his face was livid and extremely unsightly. But when he looked at Yi Qing Luo, his face twisted into a smile as he cupped his fists and directly knelt down in front of her. Dong! The sound was extremely loud. When Yi Qing Luo heard that, she felt that her knees were hurting. The great general's actions caused the commoners to be dumbfounded. He was both shocked and puzzled. The great general knelt down to that woman? The great general was kneeling to a woman? How was this possible? One had to know that the great general in Valley Wind City, no, even looking at the entire South Billow continent, those who could make the great general kneel could be counted on one hand. Unless it was necessary. Even if the great general was in front of the Gu Feng sect's sect master, he didn't need to kneel. However, the great general was kneeling before a woman in front of them. Even if these commoners were ignorant of the ways of the world, even if they were as stupid as pigs, how could he not see it now? the girl that they thought was down and out. In actual fact, she was an important figure that even the great general was fearful of. The commoners' hearts instantly tensed up. The way they looked at Yi Qing Luo had also changed. Thinking of what they had done to this young lady earlier. Chapter 3164. Maidservant Yang was also shocked silly by the scene in front of her. The Grand General's voice trembled as he spoke earnestly. Imperial Madam, these are all ignorant commoners. You are a magnanimous person. Please don't be calculative with these commoners. He was pleading as he wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Apparently, he had been badly frightened. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her long and narrow eyes. Her chilly gaze seemed to sweep past the commoners beside her. Those people, after they met Yi Qing Luo's gaze, like a bird startled by the twang of a bough, they hurriedly shrank back. Where was there any trace of that overbearing arrogance from earlier? Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly as she rubbed her wrist and laughed softly. Commoners. Perhaps it's because of the war which made their lives better, that's why they have the leisure to target the new commoners. You're right. The commoners' faces heated up as they all lowered their heads, not daring to make a single sound. How could the Grand General not hear the ridicule in Yi Qing Luo's words? He wiped the sweat off his forehead hard. What Imperial Madam said makes sense. I didn't come over often to check on the situation. I'd not expected that. In just a short span of less than half a month, this group of commoners, ordinary refugees, would have such thoughts. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she pointed out something. Isn't this a very normal thing? When there are more people, their hearts will be united, and with the addition of a backbone, they will naturally form their own cliques and split up the forces. The Grand General was able to become the general and stand tall for so long. Naturally he wasn't a fool. How would he not hear the deeper meaning in Yi Qing Luo's words? His face darkened, and his sharp gaze swept across the crowd. Following that, he tried his best to steady his own voice. I understand. Yi Qing Luo smiled as her sleeves moved slightly and a burst of profound energy lifted the Grand General up from the ground. Her charming eyes were elegant and calm without any emotions. This is Grand General's internal affairs. I as an outsider shall not say anything more. I only hope these commoners can understand your painstaking efforts. To these commoners in the safety zone, Yi Qing Luo really couldn't raise any good impression. When the continent was in danger, Gu Feng's sect was willing to stand out to protect the South Continent, to protect Gu Feng's sect. Moreover, he protected the surviving commoners within the area that he could protect. Feed them, clothe them. Let them stay here in peace and wait for the end of the war. Logically speaking, these people should feel grateful. But this group of commoners were obviously. He took everything as a matter of course. They felt that this was what soldiers should do. This was what they, as soldiers, should naturally do. Naturally, he enjoyed the protection of the soldiers. They naturally enjoyed the soldiers' food. It was a matter of course to occupy this place and live a peaceful life. Perhaps, for many of the commoners here, these days of war were actually more comfortable. For there they lay without work, without labor. As long as he said, "Thank you," the soldiers of the South Wave continent would send him food. Then, under this natural enjoyment, their hearts began to swell. However, they were all refugees, people who were protected by the soldiers. Yet, they assumed the attitude of being a cut above others. They used the peaceful life that the soldiers had brought them to oppress the new people. They wanted to control the fate of the other citizens. For these people, Chapter 3165. She only wanted to ask one question. On what basis did she feel that it was natural? Just because they were commoners? Just because their faces were big? To tell the truth, Yi Qing Luo didn't want to be entangled with this bunch of commoners and haggle over it. They were just commoners. She made her move. There was no way out for this group of people. There was a possibility that people would spread rumors that she was a bully to the commoners. She wasn't afraid of the so-called gossip. But what she represented today was not only herself. but the entire group, and the Overlord's name. Moreover, these commoners were exchanged with the lives of many Valley Wind City's soldiers. She wasn't so petty to the extent that she had to start a massacre. Of course, this didn't mean that she would let them off. Since these commoners were instigated by others and were willing to become other people's tools, they should be responsible for their own actions. She wanted to take a look at the crucial moment of life and death, whether the deity whom they revered would save them or not. I understand. I will deal with this matter strictly. The Grand General wiped the sweat off his forehead as he replied respectfully, "Those people who spoke rudely towards Madame D, I will deal with them as well." Yiqing Luo's lips held on to a calm smile as her charming eyes glowed faintly without any extra emotions. Even that clear voice of hers was extremely elegant. "Are you here to look for me?" Yes. Yesterday Duan Kuei's madam and a group of brothers had lent a helping hand and settled the Valley Wind City's battle. Within a short period of time, secluded Darkness Palace will not launch an attack so Gu Feng Sek's patriarch would like to request to meet the Overlord and Madame D, to personally thank them for their help. The Grand General's voice was sincere and filled with reverence towards Yiqing Luo. His words made the surrounding commoners look at Yiqing Luo with eyes filled with terror and reverence. Yesterday's victory was all because of this young lady's help? Gu Feng Sek's patriarch requested to meet, and wanted to personally thank them? To be able to make Gu Feng Sek's patriarch use the word request. What kind of honor was that? One must know that ever since the South Continent's monarch brought his monarch and prince and escaped from the South Continent, in the entire South Water Continent, there was only the sect leader of the Wind Valley sect. The faces of the commoners immediately turned ashen, and their bodies began to tremble uncontrollably. No matter how stupid they were, he could tell. The great general deliberately said these words in front of them. It was all for the sake of this young lady's face. If this girl, in a fit of anger, told the great general not to care about their lives, what should they do? Where should he go? The commoners were frightened, but they did not dare to speak rashly. However, their minds were filled with a scene of Yiqing Luo bullying the weak. However, the imagined protagonist calmly turned around and headed straight for the door. Her footsteps were light and slow. Her flaming dress swayed as she walked, like a lively flame burning. His posture was noble and elegant, as if he did not place them in his eyes at all. The commoners heaved a sigh of relief, but they also felt indignant. Just as Yiqing Luo had reached the entrance of the mansion. Chapter 3166. Matron Yang knelt down. It implicated her own old bones as she cried out in pain, "Ouch, ouch, ouch." This painful cry coupled with Matron Yang's ghostly wails. Instantly this scene in front of them molded into the déjà vu of Yiqing Luo bullying the ordinary commoners. It was a gesture of compromising and sacrificing himself for the greater good. It really made one feel that Yiqing Luo was an evil lady with a vicious heart. Unfortunately, the surrounding commoners fell for this trick. Seeing Matron Yang kneeling on the ground, obviously twitching in pain but still begging for mercy, the fear in their hearts towards Yiqing Luo slowly dissipated. Replacing it was a belly full of dissatisfaction and resentment. "Matron Yang, quickly get up! Why are you kneeling on her for? She's a high and mighty cultivator, she totally doesn't understand our ordinary people's pain. Don't beg her. We're not in the wrong. She ran over to the safety zone on her own and didn't mention her identity, making us mistakenly think that she's a newcomer." That's right. The minute she reached the safety zone, she put on all kinds of expressions, as though we owe her something, so she can't blame us for our bad attitude. The commoners were displeased as they started to berate. In the commoners' hearts, Matron Yang had interacted with them for a period of time, and she was their goddess, Miss Xiaofeng's person. Naturally, they were biased towards Matron Yang. As for Yiqing Luo, they could feel it. Miss Xiaofeng didn't really like her. Furthermore, her attitude was indeed arrogant, which made them feel uncomfortable. Seeing Matron Yang kneeling on the ground begging for mercy, with a pitiful look, they only felt that Yiqing Luo was rude and unreasonable, using her power to bully others. As a result, the common people's mentality of hating the rich erupted. The Grand General's expression sunk. His brows rose as the muscles on his body tensed up. What nonsense are you all talking about? Do you really feel that your days are too leisurely? The commoners shuddered as they kept quiet as they shrank back. For a moment, the entire safety zone turned silent. The atmosphere was inexplicably strange. The Grand General's face was steely green as his peripheral vision kept sweeping towards Yiqing Luo. On seeing Yiqing Luo's expressionless face, there wasn't even a single change in her expression. He felt even more apprehensive. Maidservant Yang, who was still kneeling on the ground, rolled her eyes. Suddenly, she forcefully knocked her head on the ground. "Great General, young lady, I beg you please spare everyone. It's all my fault, it's all my fault. I was blind, I didn't recognize Mount Tai. This old woman has lived for more than half of my life. If Miss is still angry, then take my life. To vent your anger." Old Maid Yang's voice was full of emotion. His voice was hoarse from crying. His entire body prostrated on the ground. It was truly heart-wrenching and heart-wrenching. Matron Yang. The great general was so angry that his face turned red. He gritted his teeth and was about to rush forward and grab Matron Yang. His actions made the commoners even more rebellious. "Great General, old Maid Yang is already pitiful enough. Why are you still blaming her? Grandma Yang just doesn't want that vicious woman to succeed. She just wants to protect us ordinary citizens. So what if he's a profounder? Could it be that a profounder can bully us commoners? Could it be that Xian practitioners can casually insult us commoners?" Chapter 3167. She just happened to get a haircut. The one who really led everyone to victory and successfully defended Valley Wind City is you, Grand General. I don't think she's a decent lady. Her heart is so vicious that she didn't even let an old woman off. She even wanted to rely on her own opportunistic glory to bully us commoners. The commoners stood in front of old Maid Yang, blocking the Grand General's path. You all are simply unreasonable." This was the first time the Grand General had met such unruly commoners who couldn't differentiate between right and wrong. His face was as black as charcoal. Facing these commoners, he hated himself for not saving them at all. Heh! A chuckle sounded in this strange atmosphere. That laughter was clear, mixed with ridicule and ridicule. Everyone's line of sight swiftly gathered towards the sound, only to see that gorgeous young lady standing beside the Grand General. Her slender fingers covered her lips as she smiled gently. That pair of coquettish and evil charming eyes were filled with ridicule. Her posture was noble and elegant, as though she was above the 9 heavens, looking down on all living beings. The commoners only felt as if their hearts had been knocked heavily by something. An inexplicable urge to worship arose from the bottom of their hearts. "Empress, Imperial Madam." Hearing Yiqing Luo's laughter, the Grand General felt a chill down his spine. That apprehension in his heart also increased at this moment. Yiqing Luo's expression became calmer. The smile on the corners of her lips became sweeter. The Grand General started to sweat profusely. This was the calm before the storm? What are you laughing at?" The commoners stammered as they stiffened their necks and stared at Yiqing Luo. The minute she opened her mouth, that weak tone had no imposing manner at all. Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled up slightly as her smile was cold. "I'm laughing at your stupidity." What did you say?" The commoners were infuriated. "This lady, don't think that with the Grand General backing you up, you can insult us as you wish." "Insult?" Yiqing Luo sneered disdainfully. "What I said, isn't it the truth? Aren't you all stupid?" The few men couldn't take it any more as they waved their fists and were about to rush forward. The Grand General's expression changed as he swiftly blocked in front of Yi Qing Luo. The men's fists landed on the general's body. When the men saw that they had hit the wrong person, they immediately retracted their hands and stammered as they tried to evade responsibility. "Ji Great General, it's you, you came up to me yourself. We didn't want to hit you, you can't blame us." The Great General's eyes turned cold, and his 5 fingers suddenly clenched into a fist. The muscles on his armor, which had tightened up due to his rage, let out a cracking sound. Suddenly, a soft little hand rested on the Great General's arm. The girl's clear and melodious voice sounded calmly, "If you want to fight, I'll be happy to accompany you." The Great General was startled. The girl had already walked in front of him. It also suppressed the anger in his heart. You're a profounder. You dare to make a move on us ordinary commoners. Don't you have any face?" When the commoners saw Yi Qing Luo walking over, they immediately retreated in fear. Pucci Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but laughed out loud. "Oh? So, in other words, I'm a profounder, so I should allow all of you to hit me, and I can't fight back?" Chapter 3168. As a profound practitioner, I am much stronger than your Miss Xiaofeng. So, shouldn't you all be a little more respectful towards me? Yi Qing Luo's tone was as cold as ice. The crowd shuddered. But thinking about how Yi Qing Luo had compared herself with Miss Xiaofeng, they felt extremely displeased. How can you be compared to Miss Xiaofeng? So what if you're a cultivator? Your ability is only used to bully ordinary people like us. Our Miss Xiaofeng is really saving lives. How many soldiers did Miss Xiaofeng save? How many people did she save? This is a person with real ability. Who do you think you are, to be compared with Miss Xiaofeng? The few commoners stuck out their necks, arguing for their deities. Yi Qing Luo continued to smile faintly. Her eyes were filled with fooling. "Oh? So Miss Xiaofeng is so powerful." "Of course. Do you think everyone is as vicious as you?" The commoners snorted coldly. Yi Qing Luo laughed again. The commoners were anxious. What are you laughing at?" Yi Qing Luo replied, "I have a doubt which I need you to clarify." The commoners looked at her warily. Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "You keep saying that I'm bullying you. I'm using my status as a cultivator to bully you ordinary people. I'm very curious, when did I bully you? Or is it that I don't even know when I've bullied you?" The commoners were stunned. Yi Qing Luo continued to laugh. Mistress Yang didn't allow any explanation and knelt down to beg for mercy, pleading for you. "It seems that, from the beginning to the end, I've never said anything harsh to you, nor did I say anything to take your lives?" The commoners looked at each other in dismay, speechless. Recalling back, it seemed Yi Qing Luo indeed didn't say anything, or do anything, since the Great General came to fetch her. She didn't seem to be against them. Even when the Great General got angry, she also said that she wouldn't bother about their internal affairs. The silence of the commoners caused Senior Maid Yang to immediately become somewhat flustered. She immediately pinched herself hard, and then pretended to make a humming sound. The woman who was supporting her immediately lowered her head to look at Granny Yang with concern. After seeing the palm print on Matron Yang's face, the woman seemed to have thought of something and immediately said, "You hit Matron Yang. The slap on maidservant Yang's face was from you, and you even caused her to fall to the ground. Aren't you bullying us?" The woman paused and snorted coldly. "Although you didn't say that you want the Grand General to do anything to us, who knows if you won't do anything to us in front of the Grand General when we aren't looking." The commoners immediately agreed with the woman's words. Yi Qing Luo's smile became even more radiant. A pair of long and narrow eyes were dyed with the beauty of a blossoming flower. "Did any of you see with your own eyes that I did it? No matter what, it's just a mouth spreading rumors. What if I say that she slapped herself to frame me?" Yi Qing Luo sneered in disdain. "Who do you think you are? Is it worth it for me to give you eyesore? Don't you think too highly of yourselves? You're too much." The commoners were so infuriated by Yi Qing Luo's words that their faces turned black. Chapter 3169. Are you all aware of who it was that gave you the opportunity to stand here? Yi Qing Luo's icy cold eyes were devoid of any emotions. The ones who let you live here, have food, drink and a place to stay, are the soldiers who risk their lives to protect you, not the Miss Xiao Feng in your mouth. Facing the soldiers who bear the responsibility to protect you, to let you live in peace, not to be affected by the chaos of war, your support for them is not even comparable to Miss Xiao Feng? Yes, Miss Xiao Feng has treated many soldiers behind the scenes. But what has this got to do with you? She treated the soldiers, and the ones who treated you are these soldiers. Yi Qing Luo's words were sonorous and forceful, filled with power. The commoners only felt their faces were burning, as though it was on fire. One by one, when they looked at the Grand General, they all lowered their heads in guilt. Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes, her gaze was like a torch as she stared straight at Xiao Feng. Through the black veil, their eyes met. Yi Qing Luo's words continued, Your Miss Xiao Feng knows how to use her own medical skills to repay the soldiers, then what about you? You don't even know how to give respect, only knowing how to enjoy the protection of the soldiers, on what basis? She laughed mockingly. Just because you are ordinary commoners? So you don't need to contribute and reap the fruits of others' labor? The commoners were stung by Yi Qing Luo's words, until their faces were burning. They couldn't find any way to refute Yi Qing Luo's words. In the end, only a few commoners retorted in a low voice, We don't know how to fight a war. Nor do we have profound energy, nor do we know any medical skills, even if we want to help. We can't help. Ordinary people have their own way of contributing. Yi Qing Luo interrupted their words. Facing these soldiers who had protected you, you should give them the gratitude and respect you deserve. Gratitude and gratitude is not something that can be done by just saying a few words. Her icy cold gaze swept past the hundreds of commoners in front of her. Let's take the simplest example. After knowing that I am the Grand General's guest, no matter how much you don't like me, you should give face to the Grand General and treat me amiably, and not pester endlessly, making things difficult for the Grand General. With the soldiers around, there's no need for you to fight against the enemy. However, you have hands and feet, so it's not like you can't take care of yourself. After the war, you can clean up the battlefield and collect resources for the soldiers. Can't you ordinary people do this? Even after the war is over, give them a bowl of water. That's your sincerity. But what about you? You only know how to enjoy giving and taking it for granted. You're still blindly chasing after a woman who hasn't protected you, or done anything for you. Do you think your actions are right? Yi Qing Luo's voice reverberated in the air of the mansion. The mansion fell into a dead silence. No one spoke. They all hung their heads low as in their hearts. They had already been stirred up by Yi Qing Luo's words. These words Yi Qing Luo actually didn't want to say. However, she really felt that it was not worth it for the great general and those soldiers who were lying in the lobby of the inn covered in wounds. A group of ordinary people whose conscience had been brainwashed. An ordinary person who didn't even know how to be grateful. Chapter 3170. On what basis should I give in to you because you're ordinary people? On what basis should I allow you to malign me because you're ordinary people? On what basis should I bear your enmity because you're ordinary people? Yi Qing Luo's tone was calm, but it was so cold that it made one's hair stand. The commoners were feeling guilty and shivering, not daring to make a sound. Yi Qing Luo's icy cold gaze swept past the commoners as she said word by word, Ordinary people are not an excuse for you to be shameless. In this world there would always be some people with such weird thinking. They always felt that they were right because they were weak, they were right because they were poor, they were right because they were young, they were right because they were old, and so on. Yi Qing Luo expressed her disdain. She couldn't understand such thinking. She only wanted to ask one question. On what basis? It's me. I used the wrong way of protecting. The Grand General was touched when he heard Yi Qing Luo's words. Since when was there anyone who stood in front of their soldiers, from their point of view, thinking for them? Since when was there anyone who stood in front of them, using her slender body to block others' malicious intentions? Since when was there anyone who felt heartache for their hard work and was touched by their hard work? Since when? They were soldiers. From putting on their armor, picking up their weapons and guarding the borders. They no longer had him in their lives. Their only goal, their only persistence, was to protect. To protect the continent that belonged to them, their country. To protect the commoners in their territory, to protect their safety. As time went by, the commoners felt that it was a matter of course. Even they themselves felt that it was a matter of course. To protect their persistence and beliefs unconditionally, even if they had to sacrifice their lives for it. But, many times, they spent their sweat and even their lives to protect the continent. But there were numerous sinister news about human nature. Selfishness, greed, desire, etc. It had tainted the hearts of the people they were protecting. Every time it was late at night, they would also doubt if their protection was right or wrong. Had they protected their own territory, protected the commoners, or, indirectly, became an accomplice of human nature's selfishness, greed and desire? This time, Yi Qing Luo stood in front of him, and said what he didn't dare to say. It also made his chaotic heart gradually clear up. The great general slowly raised his head. The expression on his face was extremely dignified. His expression was calm and so was his gaze. The soldiers behind her tensed up as they stared at Yi Qing Luo agitatedly with reddened eyes. What the imperial madam said is right. There's nothing we should do. We're using our lives to protect them at the front lines. We don't expect them to be of any help, but at the very least, they should cherish the peaceful life we've brought them. In order to save these commoners, many of our brothers have died. The soldier's words made the commoners feel even more ashamed. At the same time, he felt a little uneasy. They were afraid that the soldiers would no longer protect them because of this. If he lost the protection of these soldiers, he would definitely die. Now that the South Tide continent was plunged into misery and suffering, they definitely wouldn't be able to survive. In this tense and uneasy atmosphere, Yi Qing Luo slowly raised her hand, stopping those soldiers' agitated discussions. Chapter 3171. The reason why I said all these is not to make you feel that it's wrong for you to protect the continent and the common people. When facing the soldiers, Yi Qing Luo's voice was very gentle. Her pink lips curled into a faint smile. From the moment you put on the armor, pick up the weapon and become a soldier, this is your responsibility. No matter how vicious the common people are, or what kind of person they are, as long as they are common people, you should protect them. Yi Qing Luo's voice was very slow and her words were clear and slow. The soldiers choked on their words as they looked at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. After the commoners digested Yi Qing Luo's words, the panic and fear on their faces were immediately replaced by joy. This young lady actually spoke up for them, to let the soldiers continue to protect them? She opened her mouth. The soldiers would absolutely agree. They could still continue to live on. The commoners were wild with joy as they looked at the Grand General apprehensively, waiting for the Grand General's reply. The common people's attitude made the soldiers' hearts turn cold. Even until now, this group of commoners still hadn't realized their own mistake. They clenched their fists tightly. They really wanted to turn their heads and leave, leaving these commoners to fend for themselves. But Yi Qing Luo's words were like echoes, reverberating continuously in their minds. They had no way to refute Yi Qing Luo's words, and they couldn't really ignore it. Grand General! The soldiers' voices were slightly trembling as they called out to the Grand General. Their tone was filled with complicated emotions. The Grand General, who had a straight face and a solemn expression, finally slowly turned his gaze towards the soldiers behind him, whose faces were obviously revealing an unresigned expression. After some time, He opened his mouth. What Imperial Madam said is very right. No matter what thoughts we have or what unwillingness we have, but we are wearing this armor, so we should fulfill our responsibilities. This was a soldier. No matter who they saved, whether they should save or not. No matter what happened, they had to do what they should do. The soldiers looked at the Grand General's solemn gaze. Their eyes were slightly red. Suddenly, he straightened his back and stood in a well-behaved military posture. Yes, Grand General, as soldiers, we must do what we should do. The commoners heaved a sigh of relief. Even when they looked at Yiqing Luo, they felt that this lady wasn't that annoying anymore. However, at the next instance, Yiqing Luo's words made those commoners' expressions change. He heaved a long sigh of relief, but it almost got stuck in his throat. The girl's clear and calm voice rang out leisurely. But I'm not a soldier, so I can deal with these cruel and ungrateful people at any time. The people's faces turned pale. Miss Yua, what do you want to do? Yiqing Luo chuckled. Didn't all of you say that I love to use my identity as a cultivator to bully ordinary people? Since you've said so, if I don't make this matter a reality, wouldn't I be letting down the words you've worked so hard to fabricate? The commoners took a few steps back, instinctively asking for help from the soldiers. The soldiers looked displeased, and their bodies tensed up. He didn't even want to look at them. However, the weight of the armor on their bodies was telling them something. They had to protect these people. Because they were soldiers. Because they were commoners. Their fists were tightly clenched, as if they were suppressing something. Chapter 3172. Of course. I admire all of you for being upright as a soldier. On account of your face, I will not haggle over this. Yiqing Luo appeased the few soldiers. Following that, her eyes squinted as she gazed towards the direction of the commoners as a cold glint flashed past her eyes. But if those people were to find trouble, then don't blame me for not showing any mercy. These commoners were all despicable people. She had to threaten them. She wanted them to develop a genuine fear of her, so that she could prevent them from using the excuse of commoners to pester her endlessly. Ants were nothing to fear. But it was very annoying. Extremely annoying. She was afraid of trouble. Imperial Madam, please be assured, I will absolutely not let today's matter happen again. The great general took a deep breath as the cold expression on his face had some slight changes. Yiqing Luo nodded slightly. Imperial Madam, Sovereign is still waiting for you, let's go back first. The great general said. Yiqing Luo smiled as she nodded. The few of them were about to leave. Among the crowd, a sharp voice suddenly floated over. Miss Yi has shown great mercy and forgiven us bunch of commoners, sparing our lives. I represent them to thank Miss Yi for your kindness. This voice was extremely unique. It was like the sound of sharp weapons rubbing against each other, making everyone's ears heard it. They felt that there was a thread in their minds, making them feel itchy. The commoner's vision immediately turned towards the direction of the voice. They saw that black-robed lady who was sitting on the wooden chair slowly stood up. The black veil covered the lady's face, but from her voice they could hear it. The lady was smiling. Miss Xiao Feng. The great general's brows creased as he looked towards the black-robed lady. Great General. Xiao Feng's tone was calm as she slowly walked towards them. The commoners instinctively moved to the sides, opening up a path for Xiao Feng. As Xiao Feng walked, she smiled faintly as she continued, The commoners have no ill intentions, the safety zone is the only place they rely on, I hope Great General will continue to protect the safety zone. Xiao Feng's words caused the general's expression to change slightly. Without waiting for the Great General to speak, Xiao Feng continued, If the Great General really needs the protection that Miss Yi mentioned, then they will have to pay a corresponding price. Then, Xiao Feng is willing to bear all the costs. Xiao Feng can save more people, develop new pills, and help the Great General obtain the final victory of the war. Her tone was sincere. His words made the surrounding commoners anxious. Miss Xiaofeng, we are willing to pay the price. Don't overwork yourself. In order to treat the soldiers, you haven't had a good night's sleep for a long time. She wants us to pay the price in order to be protected, so we will pay the price. We have hands and feet. Don't tell me we can't afford it? The commoners tried to dissuade him. One by one, they surrounded him with concern. This scene caused the muscles on the general's stern face to twitch. Yiqing Luo's peripheral vision caught this small detail. It seemed that the great general also had doubts about Feng's identity. After all, after Yiqing Luo had pointed out everything clearly, this group of commoners still didn't put it to heart. After Xiaofeng stood out. But each and every one of them were so passionate and concerned, as though they couldn't wait to hold Xiaofeng in their palms and pamper him. Chapter 3173. The Grand General wasn't a fool. Combining Yiqing Luo's earlier words, plus the commoner's attitude. More or less, he understood something. Immediately, he put on a straight face as he looked at Little Feng with an unhappy expression. Miss Little Feng, Imperial Madam has already made it very clear that as soldiers, no matter what, we will do what we should do. Protecting the commoners is the responsibility of us soldiers. There's no such thing as a price. The Grand General paused as his tone became heavier, and the expression on his face became solemn. Speaking of this general is very curious. Under Imperial Madam's straightforward words, Miss Little Feng still kept on saying that she will use herself as the price. Does she think that we soldiers are narrow-minded, or feel that we are not fit to be a qualified soldier? Little Feng's petite body trembled. The Grand General's voice became heavier, or perhaps, Miss Little Feng is only trying to show her kind side in front of the commoners? Trying to gain the commoners' gratitude? Grand General. Little Feng raised her head as her body couldn't stop trembling. How could you say that? Even her voice became trembling. That look really seemed as though she had suffered grievances. Naturally, it attracted the commoners' concern. Grand General, after knowing Miss Little Feng for so long, don't tell me you still don't understand her character? How could she possibly do it on purpose? Grand General, your words are simply too hurtful. Miss Little Feng is only thinking for us. Grand General, I think you've been blinded by that woman. The commoners looked at Little Feng with a concerned look, but when they started to berate the Grand General, and when they stared at Yiqing Luo, their faces were filled with righteous indignation. If it was in the past, if the commoners had such an attitude, then so be it. But now, Yiqing Luo had clearly stated out all the sacrifices that their soldiers had made. These commoners, without any hesitation, still stood on Little Feng's side, and in turn, berated them. The soldiers only felt bitterly disappointed. The Grand General's face was steely green, as anger surged between his brows. Yiqing Luo absolutely believed that if he wasn't wearing this armor, and wasn't a soldier, the Grand General would absolutely punch this bunch of ingrates to death. This general doesn't understand what kind of person Miss Little Feng is. The Grand General's voice was as cold as ice, and his eyes were filled with coldness. Lady Xiaofeng said that she was thinking for your sake. Does that mean that I am not thinking for your sake? It turns out that in the eyes of the people, this general is such a narrow-minded person who can easily be deceived by others. His every word was bone-chilling. The commoners were frightened by the great general's anger. All of them shivered and shrunk their necks, looking at the great general in fear. He couldn't help but curse himself in his heart. How could he be so impatient and actually criticize the great general? Little Feng's body trembled, looking like a stubborn white lotus. He took a deep breath and said with a trembling voice, "Great General, the people don't mean that. They are just worried that you will be deceived by Miss Yi." Finishing her words, she shifted her vision onto Yiqing Luo. "Miss Yi, it's because they don't understand you. That's why they misunderstood you. As long as they have more time, they will definitely understand you." His words were sincere and his voice was sharp, but he also seemed friendly. Chapter 3174. Listening to Little Feng's gentle words. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips slightly as her lips curled into a faint cold arc. This Xiaofeng, how could he still have that sarcastic and overbearing appearance when he was alone with her? It gave her a very familiar feeling. Yiqing Luo searched for any memories related to Little Feng in her mind. She spoke casually, speaking of this. Miss Little Feng seems to understand me very well. Her pink lips curled into a slight smile. She couldn't see any other emotions. The casual question made Little Feng's petite body stiffen for a moment. Yiqing Luo caught this slight change in Little Feng, and she was even more certain of the guess in her heart. This Little Feng, indeed, knew her. Yiqing Luo crossed one arm over her chest as the other hand lifted up. Her slender white jade fingers gently stroked her chin as she tilted her head and smiled sweetly. Miss Little Feng, don't be in a hurry to deny. If you don't understand me, you will definitely not know. My surname is Yi. Little Feng was stunned. The crowd looked at Little Feng in unison. Indeed, Yiqing Luo had stepped into the safety zone. She had never mentioned her own name. Even when the great general came, he addressed her as Madame D. How did Miss Little Feng know her surname was Yi? Could it be Miss Little Feng knew her? Facing the crowd's astonished gazes, Little Feng gritted her teeth under her veil. Damn Yiqing Luo! Trying to use a form of address to divert the crowd's respect and trust towards her? Wishful thinking. Little Feng's brain worked quickly. In the current situation, if she denied it, it would seem too fake. If she admitted it, there must be a proper reason. Just as Miss Little Feng was thinking of a reason, Yiqing Luo was already smiling lightly as she opened her mouth once again. So? Miss Xiao Feng already knew who I was right from the start, and understood me very well. Then, I'm very curious, why is it that when this old granny tugged at me, leading the commoners to slander me, you didn't stand out to help me reveal my identity? Little Feng opened her mouth to explain. But very quickly, he was rebutted by Yiqing Luo. Don't say anything, you're too busy to notice the situation over here. I have been staring at you. The other commoners should also remember that when this old granny was pestering me, you were just sitting there leisurely, watching the show. Yiqing Luo pointed her finger. It was on Xiaofeng's wooden chair. The commoners thought back. At that time, they had angrily reprimanded Yiqing Luo because of her unfriendly gaze towards Miss Xiao Feng. So they remembered it very clearly. Indeed, Miss Xiaofeng just sat there and watched, without any intention to respond. Miss Xiao Feng, since you didn't refute me and the people didn't refute me, it means that everything I said is true, right? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she didn't give Little Feng any chance to take a breather as she interrogated him once again. Xiao Feng staggered 2 steps back. Her slender body was trembling desperately. Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, her sweet smile was like a blooming rose. So? I'm very curious, Miss Xiao Feng, and I don't seem to be familiar. Why? Miss Xiao Feng has such a huge opinion of me, even consciously guiding the crowd to bombard me? I didn't. Little Feng tried her best to maintain her composure. Chapter 3175. The commoners' faces heated up as they hurriedly lowered their heads, not daring to look at Yiqing Luo. Maidservant Yang, who was standing beside Little Feng, hurriedly opened her mouth. That's because you hit me. It has nothing to do with Miss Little Feng. Which eye of yours saw me hit you? What evidence do you have to prove that I hit you? Yiqing Luo sneered. Moreover, if I wanted to lay my hands on you, do I need to spend so much effort? She tugged her lips in disdain. The most important point is, when Grand General came to fetch me, who was the one who stopped me from leaving? When I wanted to leave, who was the one who insisted on adding scenes and stopping me from leaving? Saying that, she directed her gaze towards Maidservant Yang and Little Feng. When Grand General came to fetch them, It was maidservant Yang who suddenly knelt down and begged for mercy, wanting to pay with her life. But before this, Yiqing Luo indeed did not instigate Grand General at all, or expressed any intention to haggle with them. Later on, it was Miss Little Feng who called out to Grand General, wanting to use herself as the price, to plead with Grand General not to abandon them. If it was during normal times, they were indeed unconditionally touched by Miss Little Feng's efforts. But in the current situation, making Yiqing Luo list out one by one, adding on to the fact that Miss Little Feng obviously knew Yiqing Luo, but pretended not to know her, even if there was a group of evil cult fans who believed in Miss Little Feng unconditionally. But there was a large number of commoners who had some estrangement towards Little Feng's respect. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes slightly. Just by sweeping past the commoners' expressions, she could roughly tell what they were thinking. Her aim had been achieved. Yiqing Luo didn't want to waste any more time with them. Her calm and indifferent eyes looked coldly at the commoners. Her posture was noble and elegant, but the words she said made the muscles on their faces twitch non-stop. Don't think too highly of yourself. I'm not a soldier, nor do I have any noble sentiments or worldview. If you provoke me, even if you are commoners, I will not be lenient. The commoners! The favorable impression which had just risen, returned to zero. What should they do? Yiqing Luo's tone suddenly changed. Her charming eyes were filled with coldness as she looked at Xiao Feng. No matter who you are or what your motive is, if you insist on adding scenes for yourself, I don't mind personally sending you on your way to the netherworld and slowly acting out your big drama. As soon as he finished speaking, Yiqing Luo had already lifted her feet and walked towards the main entrance of the mansion. The great general's face darkened as he retorted, "Take care of yourselves." Following behind Yiqing Luo, he walked out. The other soldiers were also unwilling to stay any longer. This time, no one dared to stop him. By the time Yiqing Luo and the others' figures disappeared from the mansion, Grandmother Yang endured the pain in her body and softly comforted, "Miss Xiao Feng, don't take that little bitch's words to heart. She did it on purpose." The woman beside him immediately replied, "We absolutely believe in you." Xiao Feng didn't say anything for a long time. His body trembled as he turned around. Step by step, he returned to his place. Granny Yang wanted to give chase. The woman immediately pulled her back. Let Miss Xiao Feng have some peace and quiet. No matter who it was, it wouldn't feel good. Granny Yang looked at Xiao Feng with heartache and hurriedly looked at the rest of the commoners. "You will also believe Miss Xiao Feng, right? That little bitch obviously wants to frame our Miss Xiao Feng.